At just 24 years old, Cooper Thistlegrass had already reached the rank of Great Knight. He could form a contract with a fantasy beast whenever he wished, even with the Tion Zikeo family's esteemed bipedal flying dragon, and ascend to the rare title of Flying Dragon Knight. But such heirs often delayed, binding with lesser beasts, holding out for the approval of the family's dragon. It was said that these creatures favored pure candidates, those who had never formed a bond before. No one knew whether this tradition had any basis in reality. The belief passed down through generations, unquestioned. Cooper followed this path, just as Roland Yingwang-jun, Russell's elder brother, had done before him. At present, Cooper watched calmly as his wife Roland suffered her second defeat. With a quiet chuckle, he stood idle, the very picture of an indulgent spectator. When Roland demanded a rematch, he made no move to intervene. Instead, he smiled lazily and said, "Lovely weather today, isn't it? Roland, Russell, Lola, let's go fishing." "Damn it, Cooper," Roland shouted. But Cooper ignored her tantrum. Taking a cloak from a waiting servant, he draped it over Roland's shoulders with practiced tenderness. "You've been sweating, darling. Go wash up and change. Even in the warm season, there's still a chill. Don't catch cold." No matter how loudly Roland huffed and puffed, Cooper only responded with gentle smiles. Russell, meanwhile, stood nearby without a cloak, one hand rubbing his chin thoughtfully. So this is what they mean by overcoming strength with softness. I used to worry about Roland's marriage, but now it seems rather peaceful. Life at Weow Snake Manor had been quiet, so once Roland freshened up and changed clothes, Cooper proposed their departure. As they prepared to leave, Russell walked them to the edge of Charcoal Dust Road. "Sister, Cooper, when are you returning?" "We'll leave the day after tomorrow," Cooper replied. "Can't you stay a full week? There's too much to manage at Blackguard Mountain. My father's been called to court, and Roland and I must hold the domain together." "So Baron Caries has taken up court duty," Russell nodded. A lordless domain was dangerous. Cooper's leadership was essential in his father's absence. Roland, now calm but still fiery, jabbed a finger in Russell's direction. "Don't slack off, little brother. Next year, I'll be back for a rematch. I'm always at your service, my twice-defeated sister," Russell grinned. "Cooper, did you hear that? He's begging for a beating," she said. Cooper just laughed. "Uh-huh." Rolling her eyes, but laughing too, Roland waved him off. "Don't bother seeing us out. Train hard, Russell. I'll come back next year and teach you a lesson. I'll be waiting." Then, nearly forgotten, little Lola muttered, "Weow Snake Manor is boring, Russell. Will you still come visit next time?" "Maybe." "Okay, yes. You're always welcome." Russell stood on the bridge overlooking the glowing river, waving goodbye as the trio disappeared down Charcoal Dust Road. Evening fell. Eric arrived with Kevin, the gold and silver wolfhound. "Sir," Eric said, "the Wildcat sisters sent a message. Lone Wolf Lisbon may be leaving Echo Water River Cavern. He's expected to pass near Weow Snake Manor, through Alfalfa Hamlet, then head for Wildman Cave to start a fight." Russell's brows rose. "He's not using the dungeon passages? They say Wildman Cave's freemen have blocked them. Lisbon wants to go overland and catch them off guard, to take out Big Dumb Beargroff." Wildman Cave, nestled in Curved Blade Mountain, was a tangled dungeon complex, home to many scattered freemen. Among them, Groff was the strongest, not a ranger, but an armed knight. Compared to the Echo Water River Cavern, which Lisbon had nearly unified, Wildman Cave's freemen were fragmented and disorganized. Lisbon's ambitions were clear, and Groff stood in his way. "Lisbon is getting greedy," Russell muttered. Echo Water wasn't enough. Now he wants Wildman Cave too. If he succeeded, Russell suspected that even Mr. Luo Man might be compelled to step in. The Baron tolerated scattered freemen, but if they united under Lisbon, it would threaten Glowing Valley security. "He's overreaching," Charles said. "We should finish him." "Agreed," Russell nodded. "Eric, can we reach the Wildcat sisters? Get Lisbon's exact route and timing. Let's ambush him and end this in one strike." "I'll send Kevin," Eric said immediately. After nightfall, Kevin returned to the manor's annex with a scrap of paper in his mouth. It read, in crooked handwriting, At midnight, along the foot of curved Blade Mountain. Be vigilant, sir. Russell folded the note. Calm on the outside, his thoughts churned beneath. Eric, he said, you'll lead the ambush. Yes, sir. I'll take 4 knights. Charles will support from the flank. The knights gave a spirited reply. Though they weren't great knights, they were well-equipped and fearless. Armed knights, infused with powerful battle chi from ample resources, could easily overwhelm a ranger like Lisbon, who relied on meager spiritual reserves. Charles looked uneasy. Eric, are you certain of success? Eric gave him a steady look. You won't need to fight unless things go wrong. Charles let out a shaky sigh. Good. Very good. Russell chuckled. Don't worry, Mr. Charles. I'll stand beside you. If a blade comes your way, I'll take the hit. Charles flushed. Sir, no. I should be the one shielding you. You saved my life from the snow ghost. How could I repay that? Let me fight at the front. Relax. Just follow Eric's orders. Eric asked, Sir, joining us? Of course. Eric didn't argue. Russell would face real battles soon enough. This ambush would be good experience. Compared to the snow ghosts of the frozen north, a few scattered dungeon rangers were nothing. So, after a hearty meal and final preparations, Russell, Charles, Eric, and the 4 armed knights, fully armored, departed silently. They took up position in a hollow at the base of curved Blade Mountain. Kevin lay on a rocky perch nearby, 1 golden eye and 1 silver eye fixed on the trail ahead. If anything stirred, he would telepathically alert Eric. Russell looked up at the stars overhead, their cold brilliance reflecting in his eyes. Charles, he murmured, I'll catch a quick nap. Wake me the moment anything happens. Sir has remarkable mental fortitude. He'll adapt well to the snowfield battles. Eric murmured in admiration. At such a young age, he's more composed in the face of conflict than any of us who've spent years on the plains, Knight Attendant Tom added with quiet reverence. The fire in his voice betrayed his excitement. He believed that under Russell's command, they were bound for greatness. Meanwhile, in the gloomy dreamland, Russell was quite proud of the spark of inspiration that had led him there. G.A. Ice cream, Russell chuckled as he rode the small dream dragon. You didn't expect I'd have time to play, did you? But tonight, we'll explore some new corners. He didn't often have the chance to enter the dream realm, so he had no intention of wasting the opportunity. He trusted Eric and Kevin, the vigilant gold and silver wolfhound, to guard his physical body while he ventured beyond. And if fate was kind, he might even glimpse Lone Wolf Lisbon's trail before the fight began. Gaga. The little dream dragon flapped its stubby wings and carried Russell into the misty sky. Below them, the dream echoes of his knights glowed dimly, patchy outlines of armor and faint embers of life force. Eric's presence stood out clearly, his battle-hardened soul shining bright in the dark mist. Kevin's silhouette remained solid on the rocky outcropping. Yet Russell and the little dream dragon remained unseen, intangible, like whispers in fog. No one stirred as he glided past. Come on, Russell whispered. Let's climb up the curved blade. G.A. At the border between dream and waking world, they perched on a cliff of the curved Blade Mountain. From this vantage, Russell could see the dreamlike realm spread beneath him like a starlit map. The glow of magic was rare, faint, and far between. Then a glimmer caught his eye, pale and steady, shining from deep within the stone. There's something glowing down there, he said. Let's take a look. The little dream dragon swooped down, landing them beside the luminous spot. Embedded within the rock wall was a polished, yellow-tinged stone, smooth and faintly glowing. A gemstone, Russell wondered aloud. But that doesn't make sense. Gemstones are usually found near bipedal flying dragons. So what's one doing here on curved Blade Mountain? The glowing valley territory, including this mountain and the neighboring Sharp Knife Peak, belong to Roast the Clay Dragon. Any or here would most likely be clay. Unless... Russell's pulse quickened. Could it be another dragon? According to legend, bipedal flying dragons came in 108 elemental types, 72 metal dragons that birthed metallic ores, and 36 gemstone dragons that produced crystalline treasures. Rose was a metal dragon, but if a gemstone dragon had passed through, the thrill faded as quickly as it came. Russell examined the lone glow again. No, if this were an ore deposit, I'd see a vein, not a single embedded gem. Gemstones clustered in strata, glowing together in a cascade of magic light. This stone was solitary, an anomaly. Maybe it was placed here, he mused. But for a gem to fuse into rock would take millions of years. And the first bipedal flying dragon only appeared in the year 132 of the dragon calendar. The dragons were young in the grand scale of the world. In 5581 DC, barely 5,400 years had passed since the age of great dragons ended and the bipedal breed rose. No, this isn't ancient enough. And maybe it's not even a gem, Russell frowned. Ice cream, any idea what this is? God. The dragon tilted its oversized head, confused. Unfortunately, dragon communication was limited. So far, Russell had only deciphered two meanings from Ice Cream's chirps. I'm tired, and I feel sick after eating poop. Everything else was guesswork. If only I were a linguist, he sighed. But even if I could learn dragon tongue, I'll forget everything when I wake up. God, enough of that. We've marked the spot. I'll come dig it up later. With that, man and dragon took to the skies again, floating lazily along the jagged ridgeline. Eventually, the little dream dragon gave a tired chirp and vanished in a flash of dreamlight. The gloomy dreamland collapsed, and Russell's mind returned to the waking world. Sir, a voice called. Russell stirred. Lisbon's been sighted. Kevin has eyes on him. He's bringing over 20 followers, Eric reported, eyes still closed as he channeled Kevin's vision through their telepathic bond. Are the Wildcat sisters among them? Yes, they're with him. Good. We proceed as planned. Eric opened his eyes and turned to the others. Get ready. I'll take Lisbon. The rest of you handle the rangers and strays. Yes, sir, said Tom, John, Jack, and James in unison. Charles, Eric added, stay close and protect, sir. With my life. No one will lay a finger on him, Charles vowed fiercely. Russell clapped a hand on his shoulder. Steady now. If we get the chance, we'll join the fray ourselves. Our job is to buy Eric the time he needs to strike the killing blow. The trap was set. Kevin, nestled in a shadowy nook, maintained watch through his golden and silver eyes, relaying each movement through his mental link with Eric. Lisbon, the so-called lone wolf of Echo Water River Cavern, was utterly unaware he was walking into an ambush. He had come with a simple goal, to strike down Big Dumb Beargroff and claim Wildman Cave as his own. To rule Echo Water isn't enough, Lisbon muttered to himself. I'll rule the entire underworld of Glowing Valley. His men marched under the moonlight, confident, careless. In this land, as long as they left the fields untrampled and the serfs unharmed, the nobility rarely stirred. But fate had other plans. As Lisbon passed through the narrow hollow beneath the mountain, a shadow detached from the stone with blinding speed. A muted gleam of steel flickered in the dark. Before Lisbon could turn, a blade whispered across the air. Ah! He clutched at his throat, but the cry caught halfway, dissolving into silence as his lifeblood spilled.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Lone Wolf Lisbon, already drifting in his thoughts, had never imagined he would be ambushed tonight, without the slightest hint of caution. Even though he was a ranger with battle chi running through all the main meridians in his body, he was ultimately limited by his innate deficiencies and slightly weaker physique. Moreover, he was attacked by a phantom beast knight enveloped in prime breath, and in the flash of electric flintstone, death had already descended. Clutching his neck, Lone Wolf Lisbon's face, covered with a black cloth, betrayed no expression, but his eyes under the moonlight revealed full-blown terror and unwillingness. With a surprise strike, Lone Wolf Lisbon was taken down. Eric followed with another burst of sword energy, forcing the panicked rangers around him to retreat, and then he bellowed, I am Phantom Beast Knight Eric, by the command of Lord Russell. to punish Lone Wolf Lisbon for luring the snow ghost to wreak havoc in Wu Yao Snake Manor. Lay down your weapons, resist, and be killed. Tom and the other 3 night attendants, clad in thick armor, charged out like human tanks. Those who turned to run were simply no match for their slashing blows. With a few swift sword strikes, several would-be escapees fell to the ground, turning into true, restless spirits. Not even rangers, but common folks who had nurtured a chi seed. Tonight we only slay Lisbon. Those who surrender will be spared. Mr. Charles, seeing the battle was settled, no longer harbored any fear and yelled at the top of his lungs. This left Lord Russell, who arrived later, somewhat dissatisfied. Weren't these words supposed to be uttered by him, the Lord himself? 5 rangers and about a dozen restless spirits, nearly 20 people, were surrounded by a few armed knights. It might sound absurd, but the fact was that Russell had the advantage, not least because of the Phantom Beast Knight, brimming with prime breath, and Kevin the Gold and Silver Wolfhound, howling from atop a rock, commanding the high ground. Anyone trying to flee would be cut down immediately. The Wildcat sisters in the group, seeing Lone Wolf Lisbon clutching his neck and lying almost lifeless on the ground, heaved a sigh of relief. Stepping forward, Katie shouted, "Lisbon is dead. If you don't want to die, hurry and surrender to Lord Russell." "Katie, it's you. You betrayed Lone Wolf Boss." A ranger screamed accusingly. Catherine immediately retorted, "Lone Wolf Lisbon brought death upon himself by luring Snow Ghost to invade Lord Russell's manor. He would have killed us all sooner or later. My sister and I are merely securing a way out for everyone. Surrender now, or everyone will be buried with Lisbon. They're few in number. Let's break through." The earlier ranger screamed again. Lord Russell frowned and commanded Eric directly, "Kill him." Eric moved swiftly, his long sword releasing a beam of sword light that sped directly toward the screaming ranger, who reacted quickly and rushed to the periphery to escape. But after only a few steps, he was overtaken by the long sword in Eric's hand. The tip of the sword burst with a 3-meter-long sword beam, piercing the ranger's back and exiting through the chest, leaving a hole the size of a finger through his heart. Thud! The ranger, fiercely loyal to Lisbon, fell to the ground, dead as one could be. With the strength of a Phantom Beast Knight, one man, one sword, could sweep clean the entire cavern. More so on the surface. These rangers might have been adept in the shadowy corridors of the cavern, exploiting their agility and silent fighting skills, but on the open ground, they were nothing more than live targets. The might of a single sword successfully intimidated all the rangers and restless spirits. Along with the persuasion from the Wildcat sisters, it wasn't long before all the rangers and restless spirits knelt, heads bowed and utterly defeated, awaiting Lord Russell's judgment. Bathed in the clear moonlight, Lord Russell, dressed in dark golden ceramic armor and holding the green ceramic sword, approached the gathered crowd. "Sir," Katie and Catherine, the 2 sisters, bowed in greeting. "Very good. The success of this operation owes much to the 2 of you," Lord Russell said with a pleased smile. "In the future, you may walk freely under the sunlight. Echo Water River Cavern, from today forwards, shall be a thing of the past." He turned around to face the kneeling rangers and restless spirits and announced, "In the future, there will be no Echo Water River Cavern, only Wu Yao Snake Manor." "Sir, isn't it enough that you killed the Lone Wolf leader? Do you also seek to conquer Echo Water River Cavern?" A ranger lifted his head, saying indignantly, "Are we a bunch of destitute cavern residents, really worth your noble lordship's attention? Indeed, we only fight amongst ourselves in the cavern, never daring to disrespect you." Another ranger started to complain. "You dare not, do you? Following Lisbon, you lured the Snow Ghost to invade my manor, and you've forgotten that so soon?" Russell raised the green ceramic sword in his hand, his gaze falling on the blade. "The Fluorescent Fungi family has been too lenient with you." "Sir," the rangers still wanted to argue, but Mr. Charles directly moved forward, kicking a ranger who tried to speak to the ground. "When the Lord doesn't allow you to speak, shut up obediently." The kneeling ranger got up, and continued kneeling with his head down. Looking at the group of ragged rangers and lost souls, Russell found it hard to believe that they all practiced battle chi. In fact, their spirit and vitality were even worse than the serfs in his manor. Under the moonlight, they looked no different from lonely ghosts. Defeating such a group of cavern-free people was indeed not at all exciting. Bind them all and take them back to the manor's guest house for trial, one by one. Russell waved his hand with waning interest, then looked towards Lisbon lying on the ground. "Hey, are you dead yet?" Lisbon was clutching his throat, his eyeballs bulging. Even with battle chi sustaining him, his cut trachea meant he could no longer speak and could only lie on the ground waiting to die. "Eric, keep an eye on him. Don't let him die," Russell said, then turned around and instructed, "Katie, Catherine, go search Lisbon's residence right away and find the blood-fong fungi for me." "Yes, sir." The cat's sisters took orders and left quietly. "After you find it, go directly to the manor's guest house," Russell instructed. Then search the cliff walls of Curved Blade Mountain for a while. He quickly located the wall, embedded with what appeared to be pearls. Without immediately excavating the wall and retrieving the suspected pearls, he just silently turned back and waved. "Let's head back." With a group of rangers, lost souls, and 2 lost souls carrying the lone wolf Lisbon, the procession grandly made its way back to the manor's guest house. About 2 hours later, the cat's sisters returned, with Katie carefully holding a fungal worm in her hands, personally handing it to Russell. "It's really beautiful. It looks as if it's adorned with rubies," Mr. Charles exclaimed from his side. This bloodfong fungi worm was white overall, resembling a plump silkworm, but it was dotted with tiny red spots resembling rubies. At first glance, these spots seemed like bleeding points, so it presented a somewhat enchanting beauty. "Nicely done, Katie, Catherine," Russell smiled brightly. Katie curtsied. "Serving you, sir, is an honor for Katie and her sister." You and Mr. Charles carefully examined the detained rangers and lost souls, Russell briefly instructed. "Execute those guilty of serious crimes outright, and let the rest swear loyalty and submit to reformation." The bloodfong fungi worm was already contracted to Lisbon. He must release the contract before Lisbon dies, so that the bloodfong fungi won't be harmed. If Lisbon were to die, although the contract would also be dissolved, the fungal worm would suffer great harm to its essence, resulting in a sharp decline in lifespan, and it would also lose the potential to evolve into a mushroom bird. "Little one, don't be nervous. You'll soon be back in my arms," he said softly. Russell stroked the bloodfong fungi mushroom insect while instructing Morris, the butler, to fetch a special bottle of magic elixir from the storeroom. The label on the bottle read, "Blood Peeling." He then drew some blood from the wound on Lone Wolf Lisbon's neck and mixed it with the blood-peeling elixir in a test tube. Lisbon struggled, his eyes seeming to convey something he could not voice. Russell glanced at Lisbon. Having experienced the battle with the snow ghost, he had already come to terms with facing those on the brink of death and could accept it calmly. "Don't be stingy. Borrowing your blood for a while before sending you on your way," he muttered, not caring whether Lisbon could hear clearly or not. As long as it was confirmed that Lisbon was not dead, his blood would activate the blood-peeling elixir. After stirring the test tube to ensure an even mixture, he sprinkled some jade powder over it. The blood-peeling elixir turned into a thick paste. Russell then fed this tube of magic elixir to the bloodfong fungi mushroom insect which, with the jade powder as a primer, ate it happily. A short while later, the bloodfong fungi mushroom insect trembled all over, oozing 2 drops of blood from the surface of its skin. Russell quickly wiped the 2 drops of blood with a cloth, then chuckled, "Done." These 2 drops of blood were the very ones the bloodfong fungi mushroom insect had absorbed from Lisbon when the pact was made between them. It was with these 2 drops of blood as a medium that the magical pact between the spirit insect and its master was formed. Nobles regard spirit insects as forbidden delicacies, and naturally, they have researched ways to break such pacts to prevent their own spirit insect from being touched by commoners. The blood-peeling elixir was specifically developed to dissolve such pacts. Tom, send Lisbon on his way, and then find a place to burn his body. Russell turned away, no longer looking at Lisbon. From the moment Lisbon lured the snow ghost into Wu Yao Snake Manor, he was already a dead man in Russell's eyes. Lisbon tried to lift his hand weakly, attempting to stop what was happening. But Night Attendant Tom pressed his head calmly, giving it a gentle twist. A sharp crack signaled the end as Lisbon breathed his last. Then his body was carried out to be burned, perhaps fearing that the dead might be infected by the power of the snow demon and rise again on the Dragon's Sleep continent. The bodies of the dead, both humans and animals, are burned after death, if not eaten. All right, everyone take a good rest. Russell stretched. He did not immediately bind himself to the blood-fong fungi, mushroom insect, because the contract had just been severed and its vitality was slightly damaged. It needed time to recuperate. Sir, the rangers from Echo Water River Cavern are all here, but there are still 20 or 30 wandering spirits. My sisters and I plan to take them down overnight and then bring them to you for judgment. Katie stood up, not intending to rest. Very well, Russell nodded. Take Kevin with you. Thank you for your concern, sir. Also, keep the fungi well protected. Yes. Mimi had a good sleep, sleeping until 10 o'clock the next morning. The Wildcat sisters were already escorting 20 or 30 wandering souls, waiting for Russell's judgment. Lone Wolf Lisbon had died. His few ranger subordinates were all imprisoned, and the entire Echo Water River Caverns were left headless, which made it easy for the Wildcat sisters to take over. Sir, all the practitioners from the Echo Water River Caverns are here. Katie stepped forward and said, those who committed evil alongside Lisbon and actively shed blood, pick them out one by one and send them to follow Lisbon, Russell instructed calmly. A qualified lord, while possessing a compassionate nature, must also have a heart of iron. There is no need for morality when dealing with evildoers. Yes, Katie responded. The remaining rangers and wandering souls who are willing to submit to me, incorporate them into the Grotto Patrol team under the jurisdiction of Knight Commander Eric. Russell issued another order. Of course, those who are unwilling to return to a normal life can be let go to other caverns. He had already discussed this with Charles and Eric the night before. You can't make a silk purse from sow's ear. Some of the cavern-free people truly do not wish to be constrained. Forcing or killing such people serves little purpose. It's better to let them go to other caverns and continue to act as a buffer for the Glowing Valley. After selection and persuasion of the 4 imprisoned rangers, 1 was executed and the remaining 3 were willing to pledge allegiance to Russell. Humble Halls, Druckball, swear allegiance to the great Lord Russell. The 3 rangers knelt on the ground, kissing the toes of Russell's boots and bowing their heads in fear and trepidation to take their oath of loyalty. The gesture of the oath was much lower than that of the initial allegiance of the Wildcat sisters and that of Eric, because this was not the ceremony of a follower pledging loyalty. It was akin to a serf's bond of indenture. Russell wouldn't take just anyone as a follower. After all, followers are the confidants of a lord and can share in the Lord's glory, so it is better to have none than to have unworthy ones. Serfs, on the other hand, do not have this privilege. They sell themselves completely to their lord, are at his mercy, and receive only his protection in return. Following that, among the 40 or so wandering souls, 9 were executed, and 7 were unwilling to stay and live in the manor. The remaining 31 wandering souls were all willing to swear loyalty to Russell, becoming serfs of Russell's manor and joining the Grotto Patrol team. For a time, the security forces of the Wu Yao Snake Manor's territory greatly increased. Of course, aside from the 3 rangers' halls being ready for battle, those 31 wandering souls weren't much stronger than ordinary people. Before the chi seed blossoms, its enhancement to the individual's strength is truly limited. It's only after it blooms into battle chi that there's a qualitative change. The nurturing of the chi seed is easy, but the blooming of battle chi is difficult. In fact, as long as the nutrition keeps up, most children can nurture a chi seed, and those with good talent can do so even with poor nutrition. For instance, the manor's foreman Hans, the butler Morris, and several male servants had all nurtured chi seeds before. However, as Hans and Morris aged and their bodies weakened, their chi seeds also wilted, becoming no different from that of a normal person. And the male servants, who had not bloomed their chi by the age of 16, had lost the potential for cultivation. If the chi seed hasn't bloomed by the age of 16, it's basically determined that the chi seed no longer has the potential to blossom. This is why Russell's predecessor, before his coming-of-age ceremony, ruthlessly pushed himself to the brink of going berserk in order to stimulate his chi seed into blooming, fearing that once the ceremony passed, he would be declared just an ordinary person without talent. Ultimately, only a few lucky or talented individuals can have their battle chi bloom and embark on the path of further cultivation. Katie, Catherine, you two sisters lead the way. We're going to the Echo Water River Caverns to accept the allegiance of the cavern-free people, Russell said after a satisfactory meal, preparing to move out to take over the Echo Water River Caverns. And by the way, inspect the Echo Water River Caverns. Having grown so big, Russell had never been to any cavern before and didn't know what the living environment inside a cavern was like. These are the opposing ice and fire ecosystems on the Dragon Sleep continent. The entire continent is enveloped by the power of the snow demon, causing the land to be buried under thick ice and snow, turning into endless snowfields as far as the eye can see. But the birth of the great dragon tore through the seal of the snowfields. Volcanoes rise from the ground, spewing hot magma that resembles the great dragon's roar. The power of the dragon flame rolls out with the magma, and the heat starts to radiate from the volcano as the center, creating a warm oasis around it. The Shadow Flame Duchy was thus established alongside the birth of the Shadow Flame Dragon, nearly 400 years ago to this day. The power of the Shadow Flame Dragon continued to grow, and the territory of the nation expanded as well. Still, the principal territory revolves around the volcanoes, but further away, as more bipedal flying dragons are born, the ice surrounding the volcanoes begins to melt, forming warm places similar to Glowing Valley. At the edge of these warm places is the transition zone between ice and fire, the caverns. "This is the ice cap, sir," Katie said, holding a torch to act as a guide for Russell. "The ice cap above our heads is sealed for countless years. Do you see this fracture line? Inside the line, the ice cap is impenetrable, but outside it could melt at any time." "Is it because of the warm season?" Russell asked as he walked. "Yes, when the warm season arrives, the temperature goes up and the ice caps outside the fracture line melt and break, with the risk of killing someone if not careful. When the ice period comes, the temperature drops, and here the ice caps form again, providing insulation from the cold air and ensuring the temperature of the caverns. Under the illumination of the torch, the ice cap glistens, as if it were eternal crystal. Even more so, within the ice cap, one could see the remains of dead animals and plants, eternally sealed within the ice. "Miss Katie, are you saying these ice caps have never melted?" Charles asked, pointing at the ice caps inside the fracture line. "Yes, at least in my memory, they have never melted. No matter how hot the warm season gets, it can only melt the ice caps outside the fracture line." In that case, Charles turned to Russell and said, "It does match a legend that the snow demon invaded from another world. Before the invasion of the snow demon, the Dragon Sleep continent had 4 seasons and was teeming with life." As he spoke, he gestured toward the remnants frozen within the ice cap, explaining, "These remains are probably those that got frozen after the snow demon invasion. TSK, thousands of years have passed, and they still seem so lifelike." "Perhaps it's not the case," Catherine interjected. "Why do you say that?" Charles asked. "Maybe there was a great dragon kingdom here before as well, and it simply perished later to be resealed by the ice," Catherine said. "After all, it has been over 5,000 years since the birth of great dragons, and too many stories could have transpired." "You have a point, but I reserve my opinion," Charles said with a smile. "No ruins of ancient nations have been found on this land. Therefore, it is evident that our Shadow Flame Duchy was established on a brand new snowfield. We are the sole story of this land. As for this, Russell was noncommittal. He was simply observing the ecosystem of the caverns, where the glowing river flowed and below the ice caps. It was then referred to as the Shanshui River. The sound of the water's flow became especially crisp and loud in response to the ice caps. Gradually, he started to see some clues. The so-called Echo Water River Cavern was not a true underground ecosystem, and the Shanshui River was not any kind of underground river. It was a normal river that once flowed over the surface of the land. Since the land above was now covered by the snowfields, the ice caps could not melt and the land could not be revealed, depriving the environment of the nourishment of sunlight. Thus, the entire area was called a cavern. The cavern-free people lived in the holes eroded by some force within the ice caps. Even without torches, there is a faint glow in the cavern, which seeps through the thick ice cap above. Where does the Echo Water River ultimately flow? Russell asked. Into the ice. It should continue flowing within the ice, but it's too cold and dark there. No one has ever explored that far, Katie replied. In fact, a bit further, and the Echo Water River will freeze over. Water flows beneath the ice, rendering that place unsuitable for life. The space where the cavern-free people can survive is the stretch of Echo Water River that has not frozen and the ice caves where there is still unfrozen water. Katie said, "We call the places with water that have not frozen cold springs as opposed to hot springs. I've never seen what a hot spring looks like, though." The caverns extended inward along the Echo Water River, but the space became narrower. Dense moss and tiny mushrooms grew all around, and many freemen clad in bee-skin clothing were picking these moss and mushrooms. Food for the cavern-free people. "Moray Monet, come here, swear allegiance to Sir," Catherine called out loudly upon sighting the cavern-free people. Two similarly looking cavern-free people stumbled over. Then, under Catherine's direction, knelt down and kissed the tip of Russell's boot. "Have the freemen over there received the message? Lone Wolf Lisbon is dead, and Echo Water River Cavern will be incorporated into Wu Yao Snake Manor. Everyone must swear allegiance to Lord Russell. Has anyone from your side run away?" "No one has run away," Moray said warily, looking at Russell and his party, fearing he would be slain with a sword, even though he had already pledged allegiance. "Then go and call them over to swear allegiance to Sir." "Sir, no, my lord. Why will my lord care about lowly people like us?" Moray boldly asked. Russell looked at Moray and Monet, pale as addicts, and said indifferently, "I need labor, and I need the complete Echo Water River Cavern to defend Glowing Valley against the snow ghosts. So, this is your opportunity." Charles chimed in. "Cherish it, lad. The Lord isn't always this kind-hearted." Monet, next to Moray, suddenly muttered quietly, "If we become the Lord's serfs, can the Lord help us get wives?" "What nonsense you're thinking," Charles scoffed. Russell, however, did not joke about it and said with a slight smile, "Becoming my vassals means you are free to love. As long as you can find a girl who shares your feelings and her parents don't object, as your lord, I'm even willing to preside over your wedding." Encouraging procreation was a policy Russell had already planned. A flush of warmth spread across Monet's numb face, and a gleam of hope shone in his eyes. "Really, my lord? Could the words of Sir be false?" Charles scolded. Once Monet received an affirmative answer, he immediately grabbed his brother Moray. "Let's go and call everyone to swear allegiance to the Lord." As they walked, freemen like Moray and Monet gradually came running to pledge allegiance to Russell. They soon reached the largest skylight in Echo Water River Cavern, the skylight where the ice cap is thinnest, and during the warm season, it breaks open a large hole, allowing sunlight to pour in, making it the brightest place in the cavern. With sunlight and cold springs, the skylight is the most suitable place in the cavern for growing moss and mushrooms. "Wolfhead skylight, sir. The caterpillar fungus and the bloodfong fungi fields of the mushroom insects are right here. Lisbon's lair," Katie explained. No need for torches to light the path. Russell could already see the full view of Wolfhead skylight. In the center, a vast field of moss with numerous pits dug around it, filled with countless rotting wood within which the fungi bearing spots of blood red grew. On the thickest piece of rotten wood grew a fungi the size of a wash basin. The caterpillar fungus of the mushroom insects. Spirit insects could continuously release some yet-to-be deciphered power through the caterpillar fungus, then infect the same species. This allowed the same species to draw on the Earth's strength, refine it into magic power, and thereby become magic potion or magical materials. At this moment, the fungi, mushroom caterpillar fungus on the rotting, would look like a big piece of white bread with lots and lots of strawberry jam sprinkled on top. The strawberry jam seemed as plump and dripping as blood. "Sir, this is gum blood." The newly recruited Ranger Halls, from a hidden compartment in the wolf head skylight, took out a small jar, inside which was a dark purple sticky ointment. Every harvest of fungi magic potion will be made into gum blood. Russell approached and frowned. What a waste! This gum blood is just crudely crushed fungi mixed with all sorts of random stuff, without fully harnessing the magic power of the fungi. There's not a single potion maker in the grotto, and when the lone wolf, Lisbon, was alive, he personally mixed the potions. We could only occasionally have a little share. The making of magic elixirs is very complex. Generally, it's the large aristocrats who cultivate special potion makers to create magic elixirs. Commoners lack the skills. Even if they had magic potions, they couldn't produce magic elixirs. This was also the aristocracy's monopoly in technology. "Katie, take people and package this jar of gum blood, and later on take it back to the manor's annex." Russell assertively claimed the gum blood for himself, though he looked down on this crude ointment. Keeping it to reward his subordinates was also not bad. As for the fungi, mushroom caterpillar fungus, Russell did not move it. He had to first go to Fluorescent Castle to consult with Mr. Roman, to see if Mr. Roman knew about this mushroom, and to ask about the growing conditions for the fungi. Only in the most suitable environment could the mushrooms grow well. It was possible that the conditions in Wolfhead Skylight were the most suitable for the fungi to thrive, with no need to transplant it elsewhere. Eric, issue 3 tasks to the Grotto Patrol team. Please instruct. First, clean up the entire Echo Water River Cavern. Have all the freemen pledge allegiance to me and register them as serfs for the estate. If there are any who don't wish to, let them leave the Echo Water River Cavern and settle in other grottos, Russell said. After a pause, he continued. Second, arrange for personnel to be stationed at Wolf Head Skylight, guarding the fungi fields around the clock. It could be said that currently, the most valuable asset of the entire Echo Water River Cavern was this plot of land in Wolf Head Skylight. Russell then spoke of the third task. The Grotto Patrol team could form another patrol group to arrange a patrol route throughout the Echo Water River Cavern. Likewise, patrol nonstop, 24 hours a day, to ensure we can detect the snow ghosts as soon as they appear. Understood. Eric responded in a muffled voice. Catherine, you assist Eric in executing these 3 tasks. Russell named another. Katie, continue to be my guide. Take me on a tour around the Echo Water River Cavern. Yes, sir. Katie complied. Eric said, let Kevin accompany, sir, to ensure his safety along the way. All right. Russell agreed amicably, valuing his own safety greatly. With the gold and silver wolfhound Kevin by his side, no one in the grotto could threaten him. The interior of the grotto was replete with crisscrossing secret passages. Apart from some that were naturally formed caverns, most had been slowly excavated by the freemen over many years, and with cold springs and skylights as settlements, a complete dungeon ecology had formed. Cold springs, secret passages, skylights. Unknowingly, the group arrived at a skylight at the deepest part of the Echo Water River Cavern. Katie introduced, this is called Great Mouth Atrium. The ice cap above Great Mouth Atrium had a very small hole, allowing only a little light to sprinkle down from the top, forming a bright beam of light in the atrium. This is called, the Darwin effect, or is it the Dolly Garden effect? Russell stretched out his hand, touched the bright light path, and silently thought to himself. In his previous life on Earth, he often saw such beautiful scenes while scrolling through TikTok. The mouth of the Great Mouth Atrium was not large, but according to Katie, it was named that way because above the snowfield, a circle of snow walls had been piled up, protecting the Great Mouth Atrium like a big mouth. From here, you can go up to the snowfield to hunt. There's a vast snow forest nearby, where you often find snow foxes and snow rabbits, Katie said. The snowfield was not barren. In places where the ice covering was thin, the force of the earth could burst forth, allowing a certain type of coniferous forest to grow. Although perennial snow and ice caused slow growth, over time it still managed to form an endless expanse of snow forest. Some small animals relied on the snow forest for survival. Let's go up and take a look. Russell became interested in his predecessor's memories. Although he went out once a year to celebrate his grandfather's birthday, he basically stayed obediently within the carriage, moving quietly along the cramped trade routes and never really having the freedom to roam the snowfield. "Sir, Eric is not here. We should still be cautious," Charles advised. "It's fine, we have Kevin," Russell said, patting the head of Kevin the gold and silver wolfhound, who affectionately nuzzled his trouser leg. The fantasy beast could already live freely on the snowfield. So, with a simple command from Russell, Kevin nodded in a very human-like manner and leaped out of the skylight with a bound. After surveying the area, he returned to the skylight and called out to Russell with a bark. "Woof. Safe. Let's go up," Russell said, leaping up with his battle chi vibrating, covering the several meters high distance in a single bound. He grabbed onto the edge of the skylight and then pushed himself up, climbing out. Around the Great Mouth Atrium was indeed a ring of snow walls, which could block the line of sight of snow ghosts and prevent them from spotting someone as soon as they emerged. There was no wind, just snow everywhere. Russell carefully poked his head out over the snow wall and saw that the area was indeed covered with a vast, unbroken stretch of snow forest. Perhaps because the warm season was approaching, the trees in the snow forest were not covered with thick snow. Instead, many branches and leaves were exposed. They were able to soak up the sunlight. Russell's gaze even caught sight of a little squirrel nibbling on a pine cone in the branches of a fir tree in the distance. Indeed, there is animal and plant life on the snowfield, Russell thought. It seems like the snow demon's power is boundless, but even the strongest of severe colds can't lock away the warmth of the earth. Life still struggles to emerge under the nurturing of the land. Katie followed Russell up with ease. The 4 night attendants also leapt up effortlessly. But when it was Charles's turn, there was a bit of a problem. He couldn't jump that high and, after several attempts, was always just a little short. "Sir, a little help." He could only stand in the skylight and pleaded pitifully. Russell was speechless. "You should exercise more." "Forget it, Tom. Jack, help him out." "Yes." The 2 night attendants lay on the edge of the skylight, and when Charles jumped, they grabbed his hands, one on each side, and finally dragged Charles up. "Huff! Huff!" Charles sat on the ground and took a breath, awkwardly touching his large belly, and laughed. "This skylight is too high. Not quite friendly for a more robust knight like me." Russell turned his head away, not wanting to deal with this lazy fellow. "You really should slim down, Lord Charles," Katie said softly. Charles immediately raised an eyebrow at Katie. "Ha! I'll start losing weight when we get back and strive to return to my youthful and handsome figure." Thus ended the brief glimpse of the snowfield. There isn't much to see on the snowfield. It's just monotonous white sprinkled with a bit of dull green. That's all there is. Charles returned to Grotto Village and started to ramble on and on. "Sir, please don't be so rash next time. If we were surrounded by snow ghosts, that would be no joke. No need to be nervous, Mr. Charles. Didn't we safely make a round trip? But it's not right. Without Eric, it's difficult to ensure your safety, sir. If we encounter a big snow ghost, Kevin alone won't be enough. Kevin is still growing. As a fantasy beast, its strength is still increasing." "Although that is the case," Russell interrupted with a smile, "we can't always stay in warm places. We must face battles with snow ghosts." Actually, Russell was already a bit impatient. The little dream dragon in the gloomy dreamland was hungry and hoped to eat more ice pellet pearls. Otherwise, it would be difficult for it to grow. If it had been before, his strength would not have been enough to hunt snow ghosts, and he could only stay at Wuyao Snake Manor reflecting in silence to enhance himself. But the sudden emergence of Kevin the Gold and Silver Wolfhound had created the Phantom Beast Knight Eric. This undoubtedly gave Russell enough capital to start hunting snow ghosts now, and collecting ice pellet pearls would make money much faster than farming. After all, an ice pellet pearl was equal to a gold coin, and a high-quality ice pellet pearl could even sell for more than a dozen gold coins. The one leading the way, Katie, suddenly turned back and said, "Sir, can I join you in the hunt for snow ghosts?" "You?" Russell shook his head. "Katie, knights are born to hunt snow ghosts. As a ranger, it's enough for you to help me secure the manor's lands." The battle chi of rangers was too weak, following a route of lightness and agility, which was of no use against snow ghosts. Snow ghosts were all tough, burly men, and only knights, who also fell into the burly man category, could wrestle with snow ghosts. With a somber look in her eyes, Katie sighed so faintly it was imperceptible and said, "Is a ranger only able to showcase their talents in the grotto village?" Charles immediately stepped forward, concernedly asking, "Katie, what is it that prompts you to want to fight on the snowfield? Isn't it nice to stay in the manor?" Each person has different responsibilities. Hunting snow ghosts isn't the only path. "It's nothing. I just want to hunt snow ghosts," Katie replied with a forced smile. Russell's gaze shifted slightly, as if he partly understood Katie's thoughts. She might feel that since she had plotted against Lone Wolf Lisbon, her hands were stained with the blood of her own people. Thus she wanted to hunt snow ghosts to cleanse the blood from her hands. But indeed, rangers were not suited for combat on the snowfields. So, Russell didn't say much more. Perhaps after living under the sun for a while, Katie would naturally resolve her inner conflicts. When leaving the Echo Water River Cavern, Russell only took Kevin the Gold and Silver Wolfhound with him. Eric, Katie, Charles, and others stayed behind in the Grotto Village to integrate all the freemen, with the 4 night attendants also remaining to assist on the sidelines. Grotto Village will be temporarily changed to Grotto Village for now. Among the freemen who wish to return to life under the sun, they will be spread out among various villages in the manor. Those who don't want to leave Grotto Village will be organized as serfs for Grotto Village. Russell left behind his guidance. The future of the Echo Water River Cavern will have 2 organizational structures. One is the agricultural structure of Grotto Village, and the other is the border defense structure of the Grotto Patrol Team to ensure the safety of the southern boundary of Wuyao Snake Manor. Ah, the air outside is great, so fresh and natural, stretching under the sun, Russell said. The air in the cavern is too polluted and it's too cold. Even though I have battle chi to protect me, it's still uncomfortable. Woof woof. Kevin chimed in with an agreeing bark. "Come on, I'll take you for a tour around Curved Blade Mountain." Russell, along with Kevin, quickly headed to the valley where they lay in ambush the night before. To prevent exposing his secrets, he had to wait until now to start digging out what he suspected were gems embedded in the rock wall. "Kevin, keep watch for me." Woof! Kevin immediately jumped onto a nearby rock, vigilantly scanning the surroundings. Russell pulled out the chisel he carried with him, found a previously identified spot on the rock wall, and quickly began chiseling. In no time at all, he had made a large hole in the rock wall. He continued to chisel away. Finally, what appeared to be a gemstone was exposed, first revealing a touch of golden color. As Russell kept chiseling, the whole gemstone was unveiled, and it turned out to be a transparent golden stone. It was about the size of an adult's fist, shaped in a slightly irregular oval. A faint aura of magic power flowed around this stone. Russell picked it up and, facing the setting sun, could clearly see a butterfly with spread wings encased inside the transparent golden stone. "Is this amber?" Russell exclaimed in surprise. But then he recalled something from his past life, and his breathing became rapid. "No, no, no. This isn't just ordinary amber. This is an amber worm, extremely rare, even rarer than a bipedal flying dragon, an amber worm. The magical creatures of Dragon Sleep Continent weren't just great dragons, bipedal flying dragons, elves, and mushroom bugs. There were also other strange magical creatures. For example, the large river clam that Russell had previously fished out of the glowing river, which bore magical pearls, was itself a magical creature. And now, this piece of amber in his hand was also a magical creature. It has a flow of magic power, and last night, the little dream dragon and I saw it glow. This is indeed an amber worm. Legend had it that amber worms were tiny plants and animals from ancient times, encased in amber and buried deep underground, nourished by the power of the earth. Over time, the tiny plants and animals inside the amber underwent a wondrous transformation and became a magical creature. However, because amberworms were so rare, their magical properties were not well understood. At least his past life knew nothing about the uses of an amberworm. Regardless, now that the amberworm is in my hands, I will soon find out what it can do. Alright, first the contraction ritual, and then waking up the amberworm. After closely examining the amber in his hand, Russell used his fingernail to make a cut on his finger. He squeezed out 2 drops of blood and let them fall onto the amber stone. Like with spirit insects and mushroom bugs, the contraction ritual for the amberworm also used blood as a medium and battled chi or similar magic power as the driving force. This sort of ritual happened spontaneously, without the need for deliberate guidance. The next moment, the blood drops seemed to seep in and were completely absorbed by the amber. In an instant, Russell felt a faint breath added to his thoughts. Simultaneously, the butterfly inside the amber stone, appearing as if it were dancing gracefully, slowly fluttered its wings which had not moved for millions of years. Crack! With the fluttering of the butterfly's wings, the entire amber stone rapidly shattered into powder, slipping through Russell's palm. All that remained was the butterfly, encased in amber for countless years, now fluttering in earnest. It differed greatly from ordinary butterflies. Its 4 wings were not broad, but rather slender, resembling 4 wide swords. As it fluttered its wings, it was as if 4 wide swords were being brandished at the same time. The butterfly's silver-gray color made it seem even more like 4 swords. It was silent, as the butterfly danced without any sound. But from within his soul, Russell could already feel the amber worm, in the form of a butterfly, exuding a sense of freedom and joy. At that moment, the gracefully dancing butterfly suddenly rushed towards Russell's palm and, like a beam of light, astonishingly entered the center of it. Russell looked at his hand. The M-shaped mark from the little dream dragon spontaneously started to flicker, and beside it appeared a tiny butterfly the size of a sesame seed, dancing around the M-shaped mark. Without this mark, Russell found it hard to describe whether the little dream dragon truly existed. It was this mark, which he could summon at any time, that reassured him that the little dream dragon was not just a dream, but a real great dragon with a promising future, one that would eventually burst through the mark and meet him in reality. In fact, upon closer inspection, the M-shaped mark was precisely a slender great dragon with outstretched wings in flight. How interesting! This soared butterfly amberbug is actually able to merge with the little dream dragon's mark. Russell mused with amusement as he watched the butterfly mark, the size of a sesame seed, slowly revolving around the M-shaped mark. Even more intriguing, he could now, through this tiny butterfly mark, discern the miraculous functions of the soared butterfly amberbug. Swordsmanship. This soared butterfly amber bug naturally masters swordsmanship, and after forming a contract, it can help me master swordsmanship as well. Russell was astounded. Then, calling out to the butterfly that knew swordsmanship in his mind, he received countless strange sensations from the butterfly mark. Instantly, Russell was blessed with insight and sat down cross-legged with his eyes closed. In his mind, the various moves of the radiant swordsmanship technique he practiced daily for his night, morning, and evening lessons flowed through his heart. He had thought that his mastery over the radiant swordsmanship technique was impeccable, but now, influenced by the swordsmanship butterfly, he suddenly realized there were many aspects of the radiant swordsmanship technique he had not fully grasped. So, it can be done like this. There's still much room for refinement in this move. It's crude. My previous practice of the techniques was too crude. At this moment, he felt as if he were possessed by a peerless master, seeing his past understanding of the radiant swordsmanship technique as mere child scribbles. A moment later, Russell suddenly opened his eyes, glanced at the sunset close to setting, and slowly drew the green, ceramic sword from his waist. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and then opened them again. The next moment, the green ceramic sword in his hand became like a silver-gray streamer fluttering up and down around him. The trajectory of his swordsmanship was no longer the stiff pattern of the past, but became elusive and unpredictable like an antelope hanging its horns. One move flowed into another, with the grace of a butterfly flitting in the air, and hidden behind the grace was an unmanifested lethality. Kevin the gold and silver wolfhound, perched on a nearby rock, watched Russell curiously. In his gold and silver pupils was reflected a set of radiant swordsmanship technique that was utterly different from the past, more agile, more exquisite, and more beautiful. Ha! At the end of the sword technique display, Russell let out a loud shout, and the green ceramic sword in his hand fiercely struck the rock wall. Clang, crack! The rock wall split open. The green ceramic sword was unscathed, not because the ceramic was incredibly sturdy, but because the emerald set in the hilt, aside from channeling battle chi, also strengthened the entire sword. That was the universal enchanting effect of gems. Huff! Russell gasped for air, freeing himself from the profound epiphany he just had. He then looked inward at his own battle chi and discovered that his battle chi had carved out more than an inch of meridians toward his hands. This equaled half a month of his hard training before. So strong, Russell felt overjoyed, as if he had found a precious treasure. The benefits brought by the sword butterfly amberbug were immense, not only deepening his insight into the radiant swordsmanship technique, but also enhancing his understanding of all swordsmanship techniques. As his swordsmanship deepened, the benefits that followed were a strong pull on the battle chi between each move and stance. This meant that from now on, Russell's efficiency in training swordsmanship to carve out meridians would greatly increase. I was planning to tough it out for 10 years to unblock all meridians and rise to become a great knight. Now, maybe in 3 to 5 years, or even 2 to 3 years, I could unblock all meridians and become a great knight. Russell grinned widely, laughing. He might get promoted even earlier than the 4-night attendance. All this was brought about by this mysterious and rare amberbug. Woof! Kevin barked. Russell gave a thumbs up and replied, "A stroke of luck, Kevin. I'll give you an extra treat when we get back." Woof, woof. Kevin was overjoyed. Russell then turned his gaze back to his palm, where the M-shaped mark was still twinkling and the butterfly mark was still spinning. "Come out." At his call, the butterfly mark rushed out from his palm and rebirthed into a fist-sized silvery gray butterfly. Its 4 wide sword-like wings fluttered gracefully. Then, it alighted upon the finger that Russell extended, its wings coming together, forming 2 broad swords. No matter how one looked at it, they possessed the true essence of swords. Aside from helping me comprehend swordsmanship, can you perform swordsmanship on your own? Russell asked softly. The sword butterfly made no sound, but the antennae on its head shook slightly. Then it took off and began to flap its wings rapidly in the air. Whoosh! A few traces of barely discernible sword energy flew from its wings, slicing through the air. Cool. In his perception, this sword butterfly's combat strength was negligible, unless one day it could evolve again into a larger amber sprite. Then, with the magic power of an amber sprite, exhibiting sword energy would certainly be enough to harm someone. Of course, Russell did not know whether the amber worm could evolve like the spirit insects or mushroom bugs, as there was too little information about it. "Little guy, you're so dashing, might as well call you." Sword butterfly, amber bug. Russell named this sword-wielding butterfly. The sword butterfly immediately began to flutter up and down, as if quite pleased with having a name. Let's go home. Russell waved his hand. The sword butterfly instantly transformed into a beam of light, returning into his palm, becoming the butterfly mark again, revolving slowly around the M-shaped mark. That night, Eric and others returned from Grotto Village. Russell immediately pulled Knight Attendant Tom for a duel. Before, he was no match for Tom, even finding it difficult to counterattack, only able to passively defend against Tom's onslaught. This was why he was able to defeat Roland with a tortoise strategy. After all, the tortoise strategy had been thoroughly battle-tested. But this evening's fight saw a massive turnaround. Russell was like a nimble butterfly, whirling swiftly around Tom, his fine steel longsword flipping and flying in his hands, momentarily pressuring Tom from every angle. At this moment, it seemed as if their roles had been swapped. Russell was on the aggressive, while Tom was beginning to adopt the tortoise strategy. For a full quarter of an hour, Russell, drawing on his newfound comprehension of the radiant swordsmanship technique, turned Tom into a bona fide tortoise. Had it not been for Tom's substantial battle chi, this exquisite series of sword techniques might have been enough to defeat him. After a quarter of an hour, Russell's battle chi began to flag, and his assault also slowed. Tom, having found a chance to breathe, finally began his counterattack and quickly overwhelmed Russell. Instead of continuing to turtle up, Russell met the attack with swordplay. Thus his defeat was swift. Power can overwhelm skill. While my swordsmanship has greatly improved, my lack of battle chi means that there has been no substantial change to my combat ability. Russell gasped for breath and assessed his gains and losses. No doubt his combat power had doubled, but it had not reached a qualitative transformation. Nonetheless, this doubling of combat power still stunned many observers. Charles exclaimed weirdly, "My God, under the great dragon's gaze, sir, if it weren't for Tom turning red in the face, I'd really suspect he was acting. Your swordsmanship is as if it has been imbued with a soul by the great dragon. Utterly mesmerizing. Very strong. Sir's swordsmanship has broken through." Eric commended in a muffled voice. "It has surpassed my own swordplay. Sir is a genius in battle chi martial skills. Indeed, it's unbelievable. Soon we will all be defeated by Sir's hand. If we don't keep up in our training, we'll be unable to follow Sir," said Tom and the other knight attendants, offering their resounding flattery. Russell dusted off his collar and said with a slight smile, "Stay calm. It's just a small improvement." Russell, who had been a little clumsy before, had become an extremely skilled master of swordsmanship overnight. Radiant swordsmanship technique, a common swordsmanship skill found everywhere, shone anew in Russell's hands, as elegant as a butterfly. In terms of pure swordsmanship skill, he was already able to crush Eric. Russell executed a beautiful sword flourish, sheathed his fine steel longsword, and tossed it to the manservant Ram, smiling as he said, "This is the power of epiphany. Perhaps the great dragon has already set its gaze upon me, granting me new insight into swordsmanship. There is no other explanation. Sir has always been under the great dragon's watchful eye." Charles chimed in, delivering his flattery playfully. "Such a possibility is not entirely out of the question." Russell blinked. He spoke the truth. The little dream dragon was constantly watching him, and indeed, it was the little dream dragon that had brought all this. Without the little dream dragon, he would never have found the sword butterfly amberbug, and naturally, he would not have acquired the talent for swordsmanship. The banquet was very lively. Russell sat at the head of the long, oval dining table, with Eric and Charles on his left and right hands, followed by the Wildcat sisters and 4 knight attendants further down the table, and finally, Halls, Druck, and Ball, the 3 new rangers who had sworn allegiance, at the very end. Seeing as they had cooperated with Eric in tidying up the Echo Water River Cavern, they had earnestly earned their place at the table, and Russell had reluctantly allowed them to join. These 12 individuals comprised all of Wu Yao, Snake Manor's battle chi-capable people. Sipping on the newly concocted fish soup, Russell asked, Mr. Eric, after the census in Echo Water River Cavern, how many freemen are left? Eric responded in a muted voice. A total of 472 freemen have stayed behind, all pledging allegiance to Sir, becoming Sir's serfs. With an additional 400 to 500 people, Snake Manor is about to break through a population of 4,000. Russell reflected aloud. We now have 7 hamlets, and the composition of personnel is also becoming more mixed. It is time to establish a formal system of officials. Snake Manor was currently divided into 7 hamlets: Barley Hamlet, Wheat Hamlet, Alfalfa Hamlet, Lentil Hamlet, Pea and Wheat Hamlet, Magic Medicine Ton, and Grotto Village. Indeed, now all the affairs of the manor are being managed by Hans in coordination with me, and indeed there are many troublesome aspects, Charles agreed, nodding. Then let us schedule for the day after tomorrow. No, the day after tomorrow, to hold a manor meeting to decide on the candidates for officials, Russell decided. Regarding the framework for the officials, Mr. Charles, you work hard for one day, draft it, and submit it for my review. As you wish, Charles replied with a smile. Russell, entrusting the task of establishing the official system to him, was a sign of trust and practically confirmed the position of Chancellor of Records for the Manor Estate. The Chancellor of Records is the confidant of the Lord and the executive officer who manages the estate for the Lord, arguably holding the highest status among the civil officers. The banquet ended. Russell went to wash up and rest. Tomorrow he planned to visit Fluorescent Castle to report on matters concerning the Echo Water River Cavern to Baron Roman, and to inquire about some details concerning blood-fong fungi. Of course, it would be even better if he could find information about the amber worm from the castle's library. When it came time to sleep, Butler Morris entered the study carrying a bottle of red wine, a nightly ritual shared between master and servant with a glass of red wine. My lord, would you consider hiring a few animal husbandmen? Butler Morris inquired. Animal husbandmen? Yes, I was thinking of hiring a pig husbandman and also a horse husbandman, to allow Fox to return to his duties as a manservant, Morris said. Moreover, since you, my lord, enjoy fish, perhaps we could hire a fish husbandman to fish exclusively for you, my lord. Animal husbandmen are a form of hired help similar to long-term workers. Unlike serfs who only knew how to farm, old Hans could herd sheep for the lord and would be called a sheepkeeper. He could feed pig for the lord and would be called a pig keeper. He could keep bees for the lord and would be called a beekeeper. He could raise cattle for the lord and would be known as a cattle keeper, and so on. Fish keepers, horse keepers, chicken, duck, and goose keepers, even pigeon keepers and dog keepers were not uncommon. Besides these old keepers, there were many other types of hired workers, such as fence overseers who looked after the lord's hedges, grazing land allocators who helped the lord assign pastures to serfs, fallow land managers who assisted the lord in implementing crop rotation, rangers who watched over the forests, and so forth. Of course, generally, it was the larger lords who would employ full-time workers. A small lord like Russell did not need as many hired workers. Most of the work involving dividing grazing land, caring for forests, and managing fallow fields fell upon the shoulders of the manor's overseer, Hans. Hans, in turn, could distribute the work to several hamlet leaders, who could even pass responsibilities down to the serfs in charge. In short, Snake Manor was too small, with too few people and not a large enough workload, so naturally, they kept the number of hired workers to a minimum. For Mr. Luoman, as long as the serfs farmed diligently and provided food on time, there was no need to hire people for detailed management of the estate. Now that Russell had arrived with only this little bit of land, it was natural to treat it with great care. Indeed, we need pig keepers and horse keepers, and it would be best to also recruit a fish keeper, not only to help me catch fish, but also to harvest river clams and snails, Russell said. How about this? Discuss it with Hans, and later, let's have a meeting in the manor's secondary hall, so everyone can discuss the division of labor among the servants and the selection of hired workers. Yes, sir. I will contact Hans tomorrow, the butler replied. Then, have a good rest, Mr. Morris. Have a good rest, sir, the butler answered. Clang, their wine glasses clinked together, both finished their drinks, and then they left the study together. Meanwhile, in the stone house at the small market, Charles was enthusiastically welcoming the Wildcat sisters, like a flamboyant bee. Katie, Catherine, make yourselves at home here. I've reserved the upstairs room for you, and I'll stay downstairs. Just call if you need anything, he said. We'll be moving out soon. Sir said he's going to build a row of dormitories at the small market, and we'll move there once it's finished, Catherine explained. Of course, but feel free to stay here until the dormitories are built, he assured them. Charles, you're a good man, Katie said with a smile. Charles's mouth immediately spread into a huge grin. I'm just doing what a gentleman should do, Katie, Catherine, please don't mention it. Then, good night, they said. All right. Although somewhat reluctant, Charles still offered a courteous bow. Then, good night to you, two beautiful ladies. Good night, Lord Charles, Katie and Catherine responded with a curtsy, then turned and went upstairs. After the Wildcat sisters entered their room, the cook emerged from the corner and asked anxiously, Sir, if you'll be staying downstairs, where will I stay? You can sleep on a straw mat in the kitchen, he said. Ah, the cook was reluctant. Impatient, Charles waved his hand. I'll compensate you with an extra copper coin a day for the straw mat. Immediately, the cook scurried off with her bedding to the kitchen. Don't worry, sir. I'll stay in the kitchen and won't disturb your rest, she declared. The night was long. Charles was somewhat sleepless, tossing and turning on the hard bed the cook had slept on, his mind filled with the images of the Wildcat sisters. Consciousness gradually became clear, and Russell appeared again. He looked at his true body, still lying in bed, and, despite having seen it many times, still found it amazing. At this moment, he was like his primordial spirit had left his body, but this primordial spirit was quite funny, with thin arms and short legs, a complete cartoonish figure. Just then, Russell suddenly, made a sound. He found that beside him, a butterfly had appeared without him noticing, its wings flapping like broadswords. Sword butterfly? Without a doubt, it was the sword butterfly amber bug he had contracted during the day, which had followed him into the gloomy dreamland. It had truly entered like Russell and the little dream dragon, able to move freely. Unlike other spirit insects that could only bloom with magic light in the gloomy dreamland, they did not belong to the gloomy dreamland. The sword butterfly could not speak. It simply landed gently on Russell's shoulder. But come to think of it, it's not strange. You can transform into a mark, like the mark accompanying the flight of the little dream dragon, of course. You should be able to enter the gloomy dreamland, Russell muttered to himself. The next moment, the little dream dragon appeared. G.A. Here comes ice cream, Russell beckoned. Come see the new companion. It's getting livelier in the gloomy dreamland, huh? Gah. The little dream dragon flew over, flapping its short wings, and then glanced disdainfully at the sword butterfly on Russell's shoulder. The sword butterfly took flight, circling around the little dream dragon cheerfully. The little dream dragon, however, turned its head and glared fiercely at the sword butterfly, even attempting to blow it away, but the sword butterfly simply wouldn't leave. It enjoyed flying around the little dream dragon. Russell climbed onto the little dream dragon's back, laughing as he said, It seems you two have already met. Okay, stop being cross with each other. He understood that the M-shaped mark in his palm was the real-world incarnation of the little dream dragon. Once they left gloomy dreamland, the little dream dragon would exist in the form of an M-shaped mark, and even then, the little dream dragon would still be conscious. So when the sword butterfly also turned into a mark and came close to the M-shaped mark, the little dream dragon naturally noticed it. G.A. The little dream dragon rolled its eyes, no longer paying attention to the sword butterfly. Carrying Russell, it began to patrol its territory, although there wasn't much in the territory worth patrolling. The manor and the surrounding area had already been thoroughly explored by the duo on many nights, with no new magic light blooming. Another boring night, ice cream, sighed Russell. We can't keep sleeping in the manor anymore. The little dream dragon heartily agreed. G.A. Then, the duo slowly flew to the boundary of the gloomy dreamland, just above the surface of the glowing river. The little dream dragon typically crashed into the boundary, and then, using the rebound to change direction, flew toward other areas. This time, however, something miraculous happened. The little dream dragon didn't collide with the boundary, but instead passed through it. GA. Both of them were stunned. This was something that had never happened before. Only the soared butterfly, still clueless, continued its joyful dance around the little dream dragon in every direction. Don't just stand there, ice cream. Quick, let's keep flying forward. Russell quickly calmed himself. The gloomy dreamland was already magical, so another miraculous event wasn't too surprising. The key was to seize the opportunity and expand the search area. GA. The little dream dragon understood Russell's intention. Flapping its wings, it flew quickly toward the far bank of the glowing river. However, as they flew, Russell noticed something odd. The gloomy dreamland remained the same, still centered around the manor, and the boundary didn't expand with the distance the little dream dragon flew. After flying out, it was more like lighting a lamp, illuminating a meter or two in the pitch darkness with themselves at the center. Beyond a meter or two, nothing could be seen but impenetrable darkness. But when I looked back, I could clearly see the original gloomy dreamland, that small world sketched out by dim lines. Did we fly out of the gloomy dreamland? Russell observed carefully and suddenly realized that the bright area around him and the little dream dragon seemed to be constantly shaking. And this shaking rhythm was actually following the soared butterfly's dance. In other words, the light source was generated with the soared butterfly at the center, illuminating the world outside the gloomy dreamland for the dragon and himself. Hiss! Zoondoodle ja doodle. This discovery was too incredible. A mere amberworm could actually change the structure of the gloomy dreamland. But after repeated observation, Russell found this to be the truth. Soared butterfly, fly further away. Russell began to experiment. Wanting to verify some conditions, he started giving commands to the soared butterfly. Even in the gloomy dreamland, there was still a mental connection between him and the soared butterfly, allowing simple communication. Under Russell's guidance, the soared butterfly finally reluctantly left the little dream dragon and flew forward. As it flew away, the light gradually left the dragon and human, but just as the edge of the light was about to leave the little dream dragon, the soared butterfly seemed to hit a barrier and could no longer move even a bit further forward. Russell had understood. The soared butterfly carried the ability to light up the surrounding 2-meter radius, or rather, to sketch out a small spherical, gloomy dreamland with itself at the center. But this ability was not inherent to it. It was more like a borrowed ability from the little dream dragon, unable to stray more than 2 meters away from the little dream dragon. Otherwise, this ability would cease to work. It shares a wonder with the great dragon's power. The great dragon's dragon flame constantly radiates, but can only create an oasis around a volcano. To reach further places, bipedal flying dragons are needed to reconcentrate the diminishing dragon flame, then form a warm place like the glowing valley. Essentially, if the great dragon was a signal transmitter constantly emitting signals outward, then the bipedal flying dragon was a repeater, re-amplifying the diminished signals, helping the great dragon's signals to reach even further places. Now, both the little dream dragon and the soared butterfly had constructed a similar signal system. Only, it seems that Ice Cream and the soared butterfly can exploit a bug to keep flying further away without being restricted by the spatial limitation of the gloomy dreamland. He rode the little dream dragon, letting the soared butterfly lead the way, flying continuously until they reached the base of curved Blade Mountain. With the 2-meter radius of spherical, gloomy dreamland, they could determine that the steep, uphill terrain ahead was curved Blade Mountain. Amazing! Amazing! Russell couldn't help but marvel. The addition of the soared butterfly had allowed him to explore new ways of developing the gloomy dreamland, so he wouldn't have to camp in the wilderness and could explore the entire estate's territory. Of course, no matter how smoothly this bug was exploited, how far they could fly ultimately depended on the little dream dragon's stamina. They had barely reached the vicinity of curved Blade Mountain when the little dream dragon showed signs of listlessness. GA, tired? Are you tired already? GA. All right then, see you tomorrow night. Ice cream. Waving his hand, Russell jumped off the little dream dragon's back and watched it burst out of the 2.5-meter radius of the spherical, gloomy dreamland. Then, everything went dark. Consciousness fell into chaos. And when he woke up again, it was the next morning, with the sunlight streaming through the gap in the curtains, just warming the blanket. Sitting up, Russell carefully recalled everything that happened in the gloomy dreamland last night, then raised his left hand, connecting with it by thought. Directly over the palm of his left hand, an M-shaped mark appeared, surrounded by a sesame seed-sized sword butterfly mark rotating around it. This bug was really well in the spacious study of Fluorescent Castle. Mr. Luo Man, holding a wine glass, looked at Russell with surprise. Birch insect, blood-fong fungi. You mean to say that in just a short period of time, you've already collected 2 spirit insects, and including the one your sister gave you, you have 6 bugs? To be precise, it should be 7 bugs, as the sword butterfly amber bug also counts as one. Of course, Russell didn't plan to reveal the existence of the sword butterfly amber bug. Such an extremely rare item could easily expose his secret. After all, in less than 2 months, he had encountered too many adventures for it to be explained simply as the great dragon's gaze. Yes, father, including the mushroom bug my sister gave me. I already have 6 bugs. 2 glowing mushroom bugs, 1 blood-fong fungi mushroom bug, 1 rainy flower spirit insect, 1 parsley spirit insect, and 1 birch tree spirit insect. The great dragon's gaze. It seems that sending you to live at the manor was the right decision, Baron Roman remarked with emotion, but without much further thought. After all, it was his son who had obtained the spirit insects, not someone else. However, he shook his head soon after. Sorry, Russell. I've not heard of this blood-fong fungi type of mushroom bug. Based on your description, blood-fong fungi might be a newly emerged mushroom, so you'll have to figure out on your own how to cultivate it. There are too many types of mushrooms, with totals exceeding 100,000 to even 1,000,000 species, and the varieties that humans have seen spawning mushroom bugs are but a small fraction. All right, Russell nodded. What about the reading glasses you're making for your grandmother? Any progress there? Grandmother provided you with a sizable amount of gold coins, so you should put in extra effort. I've already arranged for a gem cutter to custom-make reading glasses for grandmother. The reading glasses this time will be made with dual crystal lenses. They will certainly satisfy grandmother, Russell said, aware that there wasn't much technical difficulty in making reading glasses. Out of the 100 gold coin research fund, he had allocated 30 gold coins, more than enough to make a pair of quite perfect reading glasses. That's good then, the Baron nodded. After that, the father and son had little else to say to each other. Neither of them were conversationalists, so they used silence to dissolve the awkwardness. In the end, it was Russell who first broke the quiet atmosphere. Father, I would like to flip through some books in the study to see if I can find some information about mushroom bugs to help me with arranging for the blood-fong fungi mushroom bug, since it's a new mushroom. That's fine. Baron Roman stood up. You stay and read here, I'll go for a walk. Father, take care. Seeing off Baron Roman, Russell was now free to peruse the books in the study. Although there were many bottles of wine placed on the bookshelves, there was still a large number of books inside the cabinets. Although the Baron wasn't fond of reading, he knew books were carriers of knowledge, and that for a noble family to prosper, the inheritance of knowledge was indispensable. Therefore, he collected books from all over every year and placed them in the cabinets of the study. And then, he waited for someone with fate to discover them. He would never willingly read them himself. His interest didn't lie in that direction. He'd rather play with the 3 fantasy beasts he was contracted with and read a single book. SSSSSHHHH. The only sound in the study was that of Russell flipping through books, which continued until lunchtime began, yet he found no records about amberworms. After lunch, he remained in the study, continuing his search for another 2 hours. Still, there were no findings related to the amberworms, only sparse descriptions in some night novels, which seemed to treat amberworms as a type of spirit insect capable of breeding insect-type magic potions. Can the sword butterfly amber bug really cultivate a sword butterfly potion? Russell shook his head. He had received feedback from the soared butterfly, which couldn't cultivate any butterflies into magic potions. It was an individual entity, incapable of infecting members of its own species with magic potion abilities. After all, the soared butterfly had been a species from tens of millions of years ago, and its kind had long since ceased to exist. The butterflies of today were vastly different from the soared butterflies. They might not even belong to the same scientific family. How could one infect another if they're not from the same family? Never mind, I'll just figure it out on my own. In fact, I've already had a sense of the magic of the soared butterfly amberbug. Russell hadn't found any information on the amberworm, but he wasn't too disappointed. On the contrary, this further proved the rarity of the amberworm, and having obtained the soared butterfly amberbug was indeed a stroke of great luck. You're really lucky. Before departing, Roland patted Russell on the shoulder, looking somewhat enviously at Kevin the gold and silver wolfhound that was protecting Russell. Eric did not accompany Russell. He had Kevin guard Russell to ensure his safety. Now that lone wolf Lisbon had been eradicated, the news of Eric's ascension to Phantom Beast Knight no longer needed to be kept secret, and Roland was also made aware of it. Eric actually became a Phantom Beast Knight, and I haven't even contracted a fantasy beast yet, Roland said with a slightly sour tone. You're planning to meet Mr. Ross as a chaste bachelor, Russell teased with a smile. Of course, Roland responded with an air of it being only natural. Whether chasing a dragon or a girl, it's all the same. Just you watch, Russell. It's time for the Fluorescent Fungi family to reclaim our grandfather's glory in our generation. Rod Glowshroom, the grandfather of Roland and Russell, was a renowned flying dragon knight, who, had he not died in battle following the former Grand Duke on the snowfield, the Fluorescent Fungi family might have already been promoted to an earl's family. Then I'll look forward to the good news from you, big brother, Russell said with a smile, waving as he rode off from Fluorescent Castle. He harbored no more covetous thoughts for Mr. Ross. While Roland was still trying to conquer a bipedal flying dragon, Russell had already spent countless nights entwined in flight with the great dragon ice cream of his dreams. Watching Russell's departing figure, Roland touched his chin and muttered to himself, could it be that Russell has really figured it out and doesn't want to compete with me for Mr. Ross anymore? This kid used to be quite crafty. I still need to keep my guard up. In his mind, Mr. Ross was his forbidden delicacy, not to be touched by anyone else, especially not by his own brother, Russell. Looking up at the majestic Fluorescent Castle, Roland already saw all of it as his for the taking. Now, he was just waiting for Baron Roman to pass away, and he would rightfully become the new master of Fluorescent Castle and Glowing Valley. Taking a deep breath, filled with beautiful expectations for the future, Roland returned to the living room. Roland, Lady Merrill called out. Mother, what is it? Did you talk to Russell about Melina? That boy. If he doesn't start taking things more seriously, Marcus is going to send Melina off to the Gale City Girls Academy to meet young nobles from other regions, Lady Merrill complained. I told him, but he didn't care. Roland shrugged his shoulders. Mother, I don't think your worrying will help. The kid hasn't caught on yet. Lady Merrill said irritably. If he hasn't caught on, what about you? What are you waiting for by not being proactive in socializing? Are you waiting for Princess Cunlea to grow up? There in the town hall, he met with Bencote, the mayor of Glowing Valley, a middle-aged man around 40 with two nice-looking mustaches. Mr. Russell, welcome to the town hall, Bencote said with a perfunctory invitation. May I ask if there is anything I can help you with? As an official of the fief, he was loyal only to Baron Roman and his heir, Roland. Mayor Bencote, I would like to invite caravans to Weow Snake Manor, Russell said bluntly. The manor's small marketplace is being rebuilt, and henceforth, when caravans come each month, they can sell at Weow Snake Manor, and I will exempt them from taxes. Merchant tax is a very important tax for a lord, including toll tax, import tax, export tax, and so on. Every time caravans pass through Glowing Valley, they must pay taxes to Fluorescent Castle. If they also have to pay a merchant tax to go to Weow Snake Manor, clearly it would not be worth it, so Russell could only attract caravans by offering tax exemption. If he did not exempt them, given the geographical location of Weiyao Snake Manor, he likely would not collect any merchant tax at all. At this stage, Russell only wanted to stimulate consumption within his fief first. Tax exemption. If that's the case, I will have the clerks notify the caravans in the town. Of course, whether the caravans are willing to go there is up to the merchants themselves. I won't force them to go, Ben Coates said. Naturally, trade is a matter of mutual consent. Russell, having achieved his goal, took his leave and departed. After returning to his fief, everyone was busy. Charles bustled about the manor all day. The Wildcat sisters were nowhere to be seen, and even Morris, the butler, wasn't there. Mr. Morris has gone to the small marketplace, saying he was going to discuss with Hans the selection of swine herds, horse herds, and fish herds. Headmaid Leona replied, "He asked me to tell you, sir, that he will be back before dinner starts." "I got it," Russell nodded. Seeing there was still some time before dinner, he simply took out a magic elixir of boiling battle chi and began training for the night's evening classes. The swordsmanship talent brought by the sword butterfly had given him a whole new understanding of radiant swordsmanship technique. But it had not changed his training strategy, which remained focused on practicing a single move to draw battle chi with sword techniques and carve out meridians. Each time I swing the sword, the pull on the battle chi is much stronger than before, and the training efficiency has increased by at least 5-fold. Russell noticed carefully, leveraging the subtle differences to quietly calculate the training boost brought about by the sword butterfly in his mind. 3 years. Within 3 years, I will open up all the meridians in my body and advance to become a great knight. Russell was brimming with ambition as he set this minor goal for himself. Of course, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and he did not slack off due to the improvement in his training talent, and still swung every move with all his strength, treating each training session like a devout ascetic. He kept at it persistently until the sun set and dinner started. At the same time, as if timed perfectly, Charles and the Wildcat sisters came together. Charles adeptly took off his coat and hat, handed them to a manservant, and joined Russell. "Sir, did you find any records of the blood-fong fungi at Fluorescent Castle?" "No. It seems that we need to explore this on our own." Fortunately, Lone Wolf Lisbon has experience in cultivating blood-fong fungi before. We can totally refer to this experience and make further fine-tunings. How are the preparations for tomorrow's manor meeting? I was just about to report to you. Charles followed Russell into the dining room and waved to the Wildcat sisters behind. "Come in quickly." "Sir, today we've gone through 7 hamlets, and we arranged for the serfs to discuss and elect suitable representatives to attend tomorrow's manor meeting." "What about the framework for the officials?" "All planned out, and I will write a comprehensive set of regulations tonight." "Now I will first give you an overview," Charles said. The servants had already begun serving dishes, and Charles began to explain while eating. Following the basic framework of the Shadow Flame Grand Duchy, Weiyao Snake Manor adopted a structure similar to the separation of powers. Of course, the Lord is the law, which is an unquestionable premise. Under the authority of a Lord, the officials divided the power into 3 branches. A Chancellor of Records responsible for the management of all miscellaneous affairs in the territory. A Chief of Public Security responsible for the security of the territory and defense against snow ghosts, and a Court Chief responsible for adjudicating all disputes within the territory, as well as punishing criminal behavior. Feasible. Russell expressed his approval. Charles continued to explain, under the Chancellor of Records, there will be 1 tax officer, 1 agriculture and livestock officer, 1 education officer, 1 foreign affairs officer, and a sanitation officer you specifically instructed us to have. In fact, there are also water conservation officers, construction officers, medical officers, market officers, and so on, but there's no need to establish those positions. Russell still nodded. Feasible. At the same time, under the Chancellor of Records, we will maintain the structure of the Hamlet leaders and serf stewards, with the serf stewards reporting to the Hamlet leaders, and the Hamlet leaders reporting to the Chancellor of Records. Feasible. Under the Chief of Public Security, 2 night squads will be established, 1 Manor Night Squad and 1 Grotto Ranger Squad. Under the Manor Knight Squad, a security patrol team will be formed, and under the Grotto Ranger Squad, a Grotto patrol team will be established. Charles had obviously put in some effort and spoke very smoothly. Of course, if necessary, we will also establish the Cordyceps Guard Squad and Agrarian Hamlet Security Squad, which can be affiliated with various Hamlet leaders, serving as temporary patrols. Also feasible, Russell said. Lastly, under the court chief, there will be one judge, one defense officer, and one escort officer. To be honest, it's a bit cumbersome. Perhaps we only need one court chief, assisted by several clerks to run errands. Let's establish the framework first. As to whether or not to set up these officials, we can discuss that later, Russell said. As you wish. Leave a deputy position open for each official, but let's not recruit anyone yet. I will look at the situation and recruit later, Russell added. His idea was to first set up a team of officials to familiarize and train them so that once his territory expanded, he would immediately have available officials. The next day, from early morning, Wee Owl Snake Manor was as bustling as if it were the Dragon Birth Festival. The Dragon Birth Festival is the birthday of the Shadow Flame Great Dragon, akin to New Year's Day on Earth. The serfs, taking a rare break from their labor, flocked to the small market. It's been a long time since a manor meeting was held. I remember the last time was 12 years ago when Baron Old Mr. Hans was appointed as the manor foreman, recalled an elderly serf who vaguely remembered the last manor meeting. That's right, so many years have passed in the blink of an eye. The once young Hans has now become Old Hans. I wonder whom the Lord will appoint as officials. It must be Lord Charles. But isn't Lord Charles a judge? I just got into a fight with Stuttering Bob last week, and Lord Charles fined me 3 copper coins. That was just temporary. Today is the real deal. As the serfs gathered, the small market was packed to the brim, and the houses lining the street were squeezed full of people. The pipe-smoking serfs discussed the officials, praised the Lord, and plotted to raise chickens, ducks, and geese. The women also gathered in small groups, doing odd jobs, be it picking vegetables or washing rice. The children were the happiest, forming groups and running around. As the sun climbed higher, suddenly, someone shouted loudly, "The Lord is coming!" Immediately at the western end of the small market, the serfs bowed down in waves, greeting the Lord as he approached. At that moment, Russell was riding on a splendid black horse, facing the sunshine, slowly making his way towards the small market along the charcoal-dusted path. The sunlight shone on his handsome face, as if coating him with a layer of golden brilliance. That majestic, noble presence was so intense that it made it hard for the serfs to open their eyes. Russell abolished the original kneeling ceremony. Instead, serfs had to bow when seeing the Lord for the first time each day, and only needed to give a nod of acknowledgement in subsequent encounters. Even so, the sight of the crowd, all bowing en masse, still shook Russell to his core. This is the authority of a feudal lord. This is the glory of the nobility under serfdom, even though I am but the lowest tier of lordship, Russell reflected, moved by the serfs bowing as he arrived at the small market. The manor meeting would be held here. The small market had been cleaned once, spotless, except for a faint smell of manure, with nothing else to complain about. Tables and chairs had all been set up. The serfs were forbidden to enter, so they gathered outside the market, waiting for the meeting that was about to take place inside. "Sir, your seat." Hans greeted Russell with great enthusiasm, looking very obsequious. But no one would laugh at that. On the contrary, all the serfs envied Hans for being able to speak with the Lord. It was also a symbol of status. "Is everyone here?" After taking his seat, Russell looked around the circle of people. Eric, Charles, the sisters Wildcat, for night attendants, 3 dungeon rangers, and Hans as the head of the manor crew, 6 village heads, 40 or 50 serf overseers, as well as some representatives elected by the serfs. Basically, everyone at Wee Owl Snake Manor whose name could be called was gathered in the small market. "Everyone is present, sir," Charles replied with a slight excitement. "You can start the manor meeting." Russell cleared his throat, adjusting his emotions. This was the first time he was partaking in a grand occasion witnessed by thousands, but fortunately, his predecessor had seen many big scenes at Fluorescent Castle, so he could barely cope with it. Cough, cough. In the past, Weow Snake Manor has mainly focused on planting beans and wheat, and the manor was filled with serfs. Now that Weow Snake Manor has annexed Echo Water River Cavern. As the Lord, I need to adjust the manorial operations, Russell stated, setting the tone for the manor meeting. Before we make changes, we first need to establish a complete system of officials. According to tradition, I will select 3 officers to serve as Chancellor of Records, Chief of Public Security, and Court Chief. He paused for a moment, giving everyone a chance to absorb the news. Then Russell continued, "Now, I will announce my selections." In an instant, everyone in the small market sat up straight. Though many had speculated, when it came to the actual selection, unrealistic hopes still arose. Perhaps the most composed was Eric. As a Phantom Beast Knight, he was already detached from these concerns, and as a loyal follower of Russell, he believed his loyalty would be recognized by Russell and that he would share in Russell's glory. Moreover, he had already received the greatest benefit, Kevin the Gold and Silver Wolfhound. He did not crave more. Meanwhile, the 2 most anxious people were Charles, as Russell's family tutor, naturally one of Russell's confidants. But he had not sworn loyalty, so even though he knew Russell would not let him down, he still feared being left out. After all, Charles thought carefully last night and realized none of the tasks he undertook was irreplaceable. Or rather, at Weow Snake Manor, only Eric was irreplaceable. Everyone else could be replaced. Clenching his fists, Charles strove to calm his emotions, but the more he tried, the more nervous he became. He could even hear the thumping of his own heartbeat. His gaze was fixated on Russell without blinking an eye. Perhaps I should have found a suitable opportunity to pledge my loyalty to Russell. Really, I've been so foolish. Another person who felt restless was Hans. He was the former estate manager, sent by Baron Roman to oversee Weow Snake Manor. Perhaps considering Russell was too young and might not directly move into the manor, the Baron did not recall Hans after infecting Weow Snake Manor. This led to Hans' awkward situation. It was as if the Baron had gifted him to Russell as part of the manor. But once Russell took up residence, it was clear that the manor no longer needed an estate manager like him. Although Russell didn't dismiss him and let him continue as the estate manager, Hans clearly felt that he was no longer needed. Charles was Russell's confidant, gradually taking over the administration of the estate's affairs. Now that Russell had thrown out 3 positions, there was no doubt that these were the real official positions of the estate, the most trusted lieutenants in Russell's mind. Will I get a position? Will the Lord cast me aside? Great Dragon Watch, Mr. Ross Watch, Hans prays to you here with sincerity. May the radiance protect, and I swear I will have my old wife pray for you day and night. Hans incessantly muttered in his heart. Ahem. After a full minute, Russell finally cleared his throat again, ready to announce his choices. His gaze swept over everyone's faces, noting Eric's calmness, Charles's hopefulness, Hans' anxiety, as well as the looks of others like the Cat Sisters, Tom and the other night attendants, Halls and the Dungeon Rangers. All of this ultimately became part of his noble authority. Russell had to admit he was growing fond of this feeling. Stabilizing his spirit, he slowly said, Chancellor of Records Charles. Upon completion, Charles clenched his fist tightly. Then he let go, rose somewhat unsteadily, took off his hat, bowed to Russell, and spoke with formal language. At your service, sir. Russell smiled and nodded in response to Charles's bow, then continued to announce, Chief of Public Security Eric. Eric wanted to speak elegantly like Charles, but opened his mouth and couldn't think of what to say right away. So, he replied gruffly, yes. Russell didn't mind Eric's blunt speech. On the contrary, he preferred his knight commander to be a bit clumsy with words, so he smiled and nodded in response all the same. Finally, he paused for a dozen seconds before continuing to announce, Court Chief Hans. The announcement sounded like music from heaven to Hans, who immediately knelt and kowtowed to Russell, choking up with gratitude. Hans thanks the Lord for his trust. I will dutifully serve as court chief, always abiding by the Lord's will, at your service at all times. Please rise, Hans, Russell said, lifting his hand vaguely. "From now on, you're the court chief of the estate. Just call me sir." Hans earnestly replied, "No, no, no. Hans was a servant to the Lord before and will remain the Lord's servant in the future. Please allow me to continue addressing you as my lord." Seeing Hans' sincere plea, Russell could not deny him this wish and agreed to let Hans continue calling him my lord. After having announced the 3 officers, Russell handed over the meeting to the newly appointed official. "Charles, you take charge of the rest of the estate meeting, elect officials, read policies, and ensure the spirit of this meeting is fully implemented for everyone." "As you wish, sir." Charles, having regained his compared to Russell's concise and to-the-point manner, Charles, the first Chancellor of Records of the Wu Snake Manor, tended to be much more verbose. Fortunately, he stayed on topic and didn't stray from the subject matter. Blah, blah, blah. "Thus, we will proceed to elect a few administrative officials under the supervision of the Chancellor of Records, which include the tax officer, agriculture and pastoral officer, education officer, diplomatic officer, and health officer. By the way, the 3 chiefs can concurrently hold the above positions as well." Once Charles finished speaking, Russell, seeing the surf technician and ton leader of the magic medicine ton, red-nosed Rudy in the crowd, suddenly had an idea and interjected, "Charles, let's also add a technical officer, responsible for the research, development, and promotion of magic potion and magical material cultivation techniques." "As you wish," Charles replied amiably. The nominations began immediately after, and as the Chancellor of Records, Charles first nominated a candidate, then followed by Chief of Public Security Eric and Court Chief Hans, who each in turn nominated a candidate. Furthermore, everyone seated at the small market, including representatives of the serfs, were allowed to raise their hands to nominate candidates or nominate themselves. Ultimately, officials were confirmed by a show of hands. Of course, if Russell had someone suitable in mind, he just needed to say the word, and it would become the final outcome, because what Russell said was the law of the manor. The lively nomination process lasted a full hour, finally selecting several officials under the Chancellor of Records. Katie was confirmed as tax officer, while Old Hans doubled as agriculture and pastoral officer. Charles also served as education officer and diplomatic officer, Catherine as health officer, and red-nosed Rudy as technical officer. The list was approved by Russell, and officials immediately took office. Subsequently, the election of officials under the Chief of Public Security began, which included the commanding officers, Knight Commanders, and deputies, Knight Deputies, for the Knights Corps, the Rangers Corps, and the Patrol Team. Half an hour later, the Knight Commander of the Manor's Knights Corps was confirmed to be Eric in a concurrent role, while Katie simultaneously served as the Ranger Commander of the Cave Ranger Squad. The Manor Knights Corps established the Public Security Patrol Team, led by the Knight Deputy, who was Russell's Knight Attendant Tom. The Cave Ranger Squad also established the Grotto Patrol Team, led by the Knight Deputy, fulfilled by Catherine. Lastly, the election for the Court Chief's officers began, with only 3 positions available. The judge was Hans, serving concurrently. The defense officer was appointed by Russell to Ranger Halls, which was a way to ingratiate himself with the cavern-free people. The escort officer was carried out by Russell's Knight Attendant John. "Sir, all manor officials have been elected. In total, there are 3 chiefs and 6 regular officials. 9 officials altogether," Charles reported to Russell, summarizing the nominees and also publicly announcing them to all the serfs of the manor. Charles, Eric, Old Hans, Katie, Catherine, Red-Nosed Rudy, Knight Attendant Tom, Knight Attendant John, Ranger Halls. Although not many in number, and most holding multiple positions, this was ample. With Weow Snake Manor being of its current size and population, 9 officials were sufficient to meticulously manage all affairs of the territory. "Let's proceed to the next process," Charles, Russell said. Certainly, this was a comprehensive and far-reaching manor meeting, with the following process being the adjustment of ton leaders and serf overseers, as well as the selection of 20 subordinate clerks. After all, the officials needed subordinates to run errands. Currently, Weow Snake Manor had 7 tons. Rename P and Wheat Hamlet to Market Hamlet. Russell changed the name of 1 Ton, considering it good fortune to welcome a new atmosphere. So, the 7 tons were now Market Hamlet, Magic Medicine Ton, Grotto Village, Barley Hamlet, Wheat Hamlet, Alfalfa Hamlet, and Lentil Hamlet. Market Hamlet currently has 854 people and 143 farming households, divided into 14 ridges. The former headman was Iron Arm Dunn, who is also the owner of the blacksmith shop. Charles looked at Dunn in the crowd and asked, "Dunn, will you continue to run for headman of Market Hamlet?" Dunn, who is about 50, has a thick beard. Due to years of blacksmithing, his arms are thicker than the thighs of an ordinary man. "Of course, sir." Dunn stood up, his voice resonating as he spoke. "I would like to continue serving the Lord." "Good, Dunn is running. Who else wants to run for headman?" I would like to run." The bakery owner stood up. "Lord, gentlemen, please allow me to introduce myself. I am the bakery owner. Everyone calls me Top Hat Posey. I believe I am more suitable for the headman of Market Hamlet than Iron Arm Dunn." Following him, a few other Market Hamlet serfs stood to express their desire to run for the headman position, although the headman is not an official and does not receive a salary. But compared to ordinary serfs, a headman can pay less tax, and this alone is enough to make the serfs eagerly compete for the position. The serfs of Market Hamlet had already gathered in the streets. Under the leadership of Charles, the group of serfs voted enthusiastically, and after several noisy rounds of voting, Iron Arm Dunn succeeded in defending his post and continued as the headman of Market Hamlet. "Dunn, after you go back, you must quickly organize the farming households of the 14 ridges of the hamlet and elect a new serf steward. Chancellor of Records, please rest assured, I, Dunn, guarantee to complete the task perfectly." Iron Arm Dunn, with his thigh-thick arms, continued to beat his chest, making it thump loudly. Russell doubted whether he might kill himself if he kept thumping for a few more times. Next is Magic Medicine Ton, which is newly established but has already been fully staffed with 581 people and 97 households, divided into 8 ridges. The former headman was Rudy with the red nose, a serf technician who plants glowing mushrooms, and with rich work experience, he has now served as a technical officer. After Charles finished his introduction, red-nosed Rudy expressed that he would continue to run for headman, and then only 2 other serf technicians of the same rank stated their intention to compete. Unsurprisingly, red-nosed Rudy was elected by a large margin. Now, it's the recently established Grotto Village, which after adjustment has 358 people in 121 households. Since households have fewer members, the plan is to divide them into only 6 ridges. Currently, there is no headman, nor a steward for the serfs, so the farming households of Grotto Village can eagerly participate in the election. The serfs of Glowing Valley live in family units, typically with 6 people per household. However, in environments like Echo Water River Cavern, families tend to be smaller, often just a couple, hence there are many households with fewer people. After some elections, Druck, who is one of the 3 dungeon rangers, narrowly defeated the other 2 rangers, Halls and Ball. This left Halls with a somewhat dark expression, as he had previously received Russell's support and was appointed as the defense officer under the jurisdiction of the court chief. He had thought that with the Lord's favor, he would successfully take on the role of headman of Grotto Village, but was defeated by Druck. "There are other places if this one doesn't suit," he muttered to himself. At that moment, Halls felt many grievances and already planned to follow the path of the Wildcat sisters, leaving Grotto Village to settle in other hamlets. It's Barley Hamlet's turn now, with 612 people and 105 households divided into 9 ridges. The former headman was Black Pete, Charles was saying as he pulled out his pocket watch to check the time. It's already 12 noon. Let's break for now. Everyone can go and have lunch. We will continue at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. This time, Russell, as the Lord, did not provide a meal. After all, with 3,500 people, the manor's kitchen could not handle it, so the serfs had to go back to their own homes to find their own families for lunch. However, the newly elected officials were invited by Russell to the manor's annex to enjoy a sumptuous lunch. Cheers. Here's to achieving outstanding results in your new positions. Russell raised his glass of red wine. The officials responded in unison. We will serve this, sir, wholeheartedly. Hypite, the former head of Barley Hamlet, was successfully elected. Afterward, Wheat Hamlet, with 591 people and 100 households divided into 9 ridges, also saw its former head, One-Eyed Boris, successfully retain his position. Next, Alfalfa Hamlet, with 355 people and 62 households divided into 6 ridges, still had its former head, the lame Adolf, successfully re-elected. Only Lentil Hamlet, with 632 people and 108 households divided into 10 ridges, experienced some changes. The former head of the hamlet was Sharby, a man always seen with a smile on his face and whose hair had already turned gray. The reason he acquired the nickname Old Vegetable was due to how good he was at growing vegetables and his willingness to guide others in vegetable planting. Besides growing lentils, almost every household in Lentil Hamlet had cultivated a garden to grow vegetables, so Old Vegetable Sharby was highly respected. The serfs still wanted to elect Old Vegetable Sharby as the head of the hamlet. Unfortunately, Sharby had grown old and his legs and feet were no longer agile, so he took the initiative to give up the election. But, to everyone's surprise, the serfs ended up electing Sharby's wife, who was more than a decade his junior, Mrs. Sharby. Mrs. Sharby is as warm-hearted as Old Vegetable, and she can also grow vegetables. Yes, just a few days ago, Mrs. Sharby was helping us plant onions and celery. I hope Mrs. Sharby could be the head of the hamlet. Old Vegetable will be there to support Mrs. Sharby from behind. The serfs genuinely supported the Sharby couple. After all, predicting the weather and the right season to plant vegetables is a skill in itself, and they could be considered as artisan serfs. Sir, this Mrs. Sharby is, after all, a woman, Charles said, somewhat embarrassed by the situation. However, Russell responded with a hearty laugh. So what if she's a woman? Since the farmers trust Mrs. Sharby to be a good head of the hamlet, why not let Mrs. Sharby give it a try? Now, I formally appoint Mrs. Sharby as the head of Lentil Hamlet. Upon hearing Russell's appointment, the serfs of Lentil Hamlet immediately burst into cheers and leaping joy. Praise the Lord! The Lord is kind and has a good heart. He truly cares for us serfs. The Lord will one day ride a dragon. I want to kiss the Lord's shoe tips to express my gratitude. With the Lord, our lives will only get better. Mrs. Sharby was equally excited, covering her mouth with both hands, hardly believing, "Oh my, really, my lord, can I truly be the head of the hamlet? Heavens, I didn't dare to think so. I'm just a foolish woman." Mrs. Sharby, you must believe in yourself, believe in the farmer's trust in you, Russell encouraged. Yes, my lord, I believe in myself. Mrs. Sharby cherished the opportunity, nodding continuously with tears in her eyes. Praise the Lord. Thank you for letting me be the head of the hamlet. I will take the responsibility seriously and do my best as the head. Let us then wait and see, Russell smiled. Once Mrs. Sharby was confirmed as the head, the election of the leaders of all 7 hamlets of Wuyao Snake Manor was completed. The head of a hamlet isn't an official, nor do they belong solely to the Chancellor of Records. The head needs to be accountable to every official and work with them to manage all matters of the hamlet. Sir, the election of the heads is finished. Shall we take this opportunity to also elect the leaders of the Cordyceps Guard Squad and the Agrarian Hamlet Security Squad? Charles asked, noticing that there was still time in the day. Russell thought for a moment and said, Let's elect the captain of the Cordyceps Guard Squad. As for the Agrarian Hamlet Security Squad, like the serf stewards, let each agrarian hamlet elect their own. Yes, sir. Currently, there are 6 cordyceps in the territory. Of these, Magic Medicine Ton has 5 cordyceps, a white birch cordyceps, 2 fluorescent mushroom cordyceps, a dill cordyceps, and a rainy season flower cordyceps. Additionally, a bloodfong fungi cordyceps is located within the wolf head skylight of Grotto Village. After discussion among the officials, it was decided to establish 2 cordyceps guard squads. One is the Birch Forest Cordyceps Guard Squad, and Russell's Knight Attendant Jack was elected as the guard captain. The other is the Wolf Head Skylight Cordyceps Guard Squad, where the officials intended to elect the Defense Officer Halls as the guard captain. However, because Halls, still holding a grudge for not becoming the chief of Grotto Village, didn't plan to stay any longer, he declined the position. In the end, another ranger, Ball, was elected as the guard captain. With this, almost all officials and heads of the hamlets have been finalized. But Russell sharply noticed that his knight attendant James had not been elected to any position. Tom had been appointed as the deputy of the security patrol knights. John had been appointed as the court's escort officer, and Jack had been appointed as the captain of the Birch Forest Cordyceps Guard Squad. One has to be fair. I'm quite satisfied with all 4 attendants, Russell thought to himself. So he turned to Charles and said, I plan to establish a manor transportation team, responsible for the transit of goods between the town and the manor. If the farmers need to go to the market, they can also take the transportation team to save time. Sir, you've considered well. The manor indeed needs a transport squad, Charles agreed. Let James take on the role of the transport squad leader, Russell said casually. The previously disheartened James first felt surprised upon hearing this. Then a sense of gratitude surged within him as one who would die for a master who recognizes his worth. And he knelt on one knee. Sir, James will not fail the trust, striving to maintain the manor transport team well. Russell gladly accepted James's gratitude. Anyhow, everyone close to him had received a new position, and a lively manor meeting came to a happy conclusion. That evening, the officials were guests at the manor's guest house, drinking and feasting with Russell. Gentlemen, drink a full cup. Russell raised his glass, signaling everyone to drink together. Now that the division of responsibilities is clear, it's time to stride forward. The windmill mill is about to be completed, and public toilets must be put on the agenda immediately. Next, we still have to build composting grounds, septic tanks, and so on. Rest assured, sir, we will carry out all these constructions in an orderly fashion. Charles, who is eating with greasy lips as the newly appointed Chancellor of Records, contentedly replied. We also need to start organizing the small marketplace immediately, as merchant caravans might come before long. By the end of this warm season, I hope the administrative office, courthouse, dormitories, and schools of the small marketplace can be built one after another, and in addition, expand charcoal dust path into charcoal dust road. Seeing Russell's eagerness to achieve a great deal at once, Charles hastily advised, Sir, let's take it one step at a time. During the warm season, the serfs should still prioritize farming, and manor construction will need to take place during their resting time. Indeed, we must not overwork the serfs, Russell set the tone. In any case, as long as the serfs come to serve, they must be fed by the manor. For those who perform well and are diligent, I will also allocate a sum of money as an award. You are too generous. The work in Grotto Village also must not stop, especially the establishment of the patrol squads. Though snow ghost invasions are rare during the warm seasons, we cannot afford to be careless. Katie responded promptly. Please rest assured, sir, I will keep a close watch on Echo Water River Cavern and will not let a single snow ghost cross the line. Good. Russell raised his glass again. Come, gentlemen, drink a full cup once more. It happened that yesterday's manor meeting concluded with the decision to expand the marketplace slightly, which enabled the merchant caravan to smoothly settle into the marketplace. Clothing, farm tools, circus performances, sugar figurines, poultry and eggs, kittens and puppies, medicinal plasters, ring toss, and riddles, the caravan offered a dazzling array of goods. Of course, the merchants dealing in valuable merchandise didn't show up. It was the small traders and peddlers who came. Master, would you like to take a stroll through the marketplace? Butler Morris asked as he approached the living room. Russell had just finished his nightly morning practice, sweating profusely, and was now resting in a chair while casually looking at some new books. These new books had been borrowed from the library of Fluorescent Castle. Borrowed in quotes because he had no intention of returning them. After all, neither Mr. Luo Man nor his elder brother, Roland, took any interest in reading. Leaving the books at Fluorescent Castle would have been a waste. It would be better to leave them for Russell, someone who cherished reading. I'll pass, Russell said nonchalantly. Butler Morris, give the servants a day off. Let them enjoy the marketplace's festivities. Your kindness is boundless, master. I'll go and share the good news with the servants right away. Soon, Russell, sitting in the living room, heard cheers from the servants, male and female alike, coming from the direction of the courtyard garden. After all, happiness is such a simple thing. Sometimes all it takes is a brief holiday. Butler Morris returned. Russell said, "You should take a break as well. Go and visit the marketplace." "I'd rather not, master. If all the male and female servants are out at the marketplace, there should be someone to attend to you," Butler Morris replied. "There's really no need for attendance. I only plan to read at home today." In Russell's eyes, his life was quite monotonous and didn't necessitate servants waiting on him constantly. Moreover, the manor's secondary residence was just a small villa. There was hardly so much work to manage. In Russell's opinion, many tasks seemed a mere waste of labor. For example, the extensive cleaning done every morning. Regardless of whether there was dust on the tables or windows, the maids were expected to wipe everything from top to bottom, day in and day out. According to Russell's judgment, cleaning once a week would be sufficient. For Butler Morris, however, everything had to be impeccable, and he personally inspected every nook and cranny daily to ensure there were no lapses in cleanliness. If any area fell short of standards, not wiped thoroughly enough, he would consider it a slight to the master's dignity and reprimand the servants accordingly. In short, in matters of stewardship, Morris was utterly diligent and responsible. The small secondary residence of the manor was in his care, impeccably orderly. The upstairs and downstairs, the courtyard garden, the lawn in front of the house, the kennels and stables. Every corner was kept clean and tidy. This was in stark contrast to the dirt and disorder of the coal slag paths and the marketplace. "Master, if you have some free time, I would like to discuss with you the selection of an elderly couple," Butler Morris said. "Oh, go ahead," Russell responded. "Mr. and Mrs. Brown's work in the manor is somewhat out of place. Mrs. Brown helps in the kitchen, but she is not a kitchen maid, and Mr. Brown is even more awkward, his age being far too advanced compared to the male servants." Mr. and Mrs. Brown were the former caretakers of the manor's secondary residence, responsible for looking after this country villa for Baron Roman. However, like the plight that Hans faced, after Wee Owl Snake Manor had been granted to Russell, the Baron did not call back these servants. Then, once Russell arrived with his own retinue, the Browns were left in an awkward position, ultimately staying on with an ambiguous status. This was uncomfortable not just for Mr. and Mrs. Brown themselves, but also made Butler Morris quite uneasy. Indeed, it seems rather unfair to have Mr. and Mrs. Brown doing odd jobs at the manor's annex, Russell said. "Since you brought them up, there must be some new arrangement." "Your lordship, didn't you mention building a black pig farm?" Butler Morris said. "I've talked with Mr. Brown, and he is very willing to take care of the black pigs to become a swineherd. Maybe we could arrange for him to work at the black pig farm. If the black pig farm is really built, it will definitely not stay near the manor's annex, but be located in some village." "Is Mr. Brown willing to work in the village?" "He is very willing. I can assure you of that, your lordship. In that case, let Mr. Brown give it a try. But I have high hopes for the black pigs, and his work as a swineherd is very important. If he doesn't perform well, I will replace him immediately," Russell said seriously. The black pigs were capable of refining a hint of primordial force within their bodies, an excellent breeding gene for primordial beasts, likely to develop new breeds of primordial beasts in the future. Their value was immeasurable. Russell naturally wanted to invest significant effort into breeding black pigs, even applying knowledge of breeding from Earth to continuously optimize the genes of the black pigs. Therefore, it was essential to have a swineherd at the black pig farm who could perfectly execute Russell's ideas. Russell then asked, "What about Mrs. Brown? Will she also work at the black pig farm? I recall they have a son working as a clerk in a shop in town, right?" "Yes," Morris answered. "But Mr. Brown doesn't wish for Mrs. Brown to join him in pig farming. For women, this work is indeed somewhat hard. It seems Mrs. Brown prefers to stay at the Manor's Annex. If she stays at the Manor's Annex, how will she be accommodated? I've noticed that Mrs. Brown seems to have a good deal of experience with pastries. Your lordship, would you be willing to assign Mrs. Moore an assistant and let Mrs. Brown be a pastry chef, specifically to cook various types of bread and cakes for you? A pastry chef? Russell suddenly thought of something. Instead of immediately deciding on Mrs. Brown's job as a pastry chef, he said, "Where is Mrs. Brown now? Has she gone to the market?" "No. She's in the kitchen, watching over the stove." "Call her over. I have some ideas I need to ask her about." "Understood." A minute later, Mrs. Brown stood in front of Russell. Unlike Mrs. Moore, who had been so nervous that she shook when she first met Russell, Mrs. Brown was much calmer. "Your lordship, Butler Morris said you wanted to see me." Mrs. Brown spoke, gentle in her words, probably in her 40s or 50s. "I heard from Butler Morris that you're very skilled at cooking pastries. So, what kind of pastries can you make? Were the pastries at dinner, along with the desserts served after, all made by you?" Russell asked, closing the book in his hand. At first, it was all Mrs. Moore's doing. Only a few times, when there were banquets and Mrs. Moore couldn't manage, she asked me to make the pastries. I can cook most types of bread, thin biscuits, egg tarts, puff pastry, choux pastries. Mrs. Brown listed quite a few common pastries. To be able to make so many pastries, have you worked in the kitchens of Fluorescent Castle before? Russell asked curiously. Mrs. Brown replied with a smile, "Yes, I spent some time working as a kitchen maid in Fluorescent Castle. Mrs. Gramer taught me a lot about pastries." Mrs. Gramer was the head cook of Fluorescent Castle, who had worked her way up from kitchen maid to her position and had spent her life working in the kitchens of Fluorescent Castle. The food Russell had eaten from childhood to adulthood was mostly prepared by Mrs. Gramer's hands. No wonder. Russell acknowledged Mrs. Brown's skills. In this era, expertise was as valuable as knowledge, hard to acquire for the average person. "Butler Morris recommended you as a pastry chef, but I have a new idea. Mrs. Brown, I, too, have studied fine foods, so I want you to collaborate with me to invent some new types of pastries." Russell shared his thoughts. For no other reason. He wanted to eat steamed buns, dumplings, fried dough sticks, and big white buns. Mrs. Brown immediately understood. "Sir, do you mean for me to try some new flavor combinations like Mrs. Moore?" By now, everyone in the Manor's Annex knew that Mrs. Moore had started developing new dishes under Russell's authorization. Not only would the castle's banquets occasionally feature one or two oddly unusual dishes, but also nearly every meal in the servants' dining room would see the introduction of an inexplicable dish, after which Mrs. Moore would await the servants' feedback, wiping her hands with her apron. Most of the time, the feedback was negative, but occasionally she would receive positive feedback, and Mrs. Moore would then gleefully present the well-received new dish to Russell. Of course, the number of new dishes that actually gained Russell's approval was still few and far between. Only a fish soup made with ginger and spring onions had earned high praise from Russell, becoming a staple at every banquet and Mrs. Moore's specialty. It was even named by Russell as Secret Ginger Onion Fresh Fish Soup, considered to be on par with the Blind Eye Dragon Soup. Others, like Charles and Eric, also thought the Secret Ginger Onion Fresh Fish Soup was a delicious dish suitable to accompany meals. "Not just new formulas, but also new styles," said Russell, quickly sharing his concept for steamed buns. However, he vaguely knew that the flour needed for steamed buns was not the same as that for bread. It seemed that bread required high-gluten flour, while steamed buns called for all-purpose flour. Of course, in his previous life, Russell didn't know how to steam buns. He could only cook a few simple dishes, so he could only give Mrs. Brown a rough idea of how to make steamed buns, leaving the rest up to her to figure out. Don't be afraid to waste. Try different types of flour to achieve the closest result to steamed buns, then gradually refine it. "Rest assured, sir, I will seriously study how to make steamed buns," replied Mrs. Brown. "Good. I look forward to seeing the results of your research." The culinary revolution needed to happen step by step. Now that Mrs. Moore was developing stir-fries and other Chinese dishes, Mrs. Brown would take on the pastries. One day, Russell believed he would be able to eat a table full of dishes from his homeland. Mrs. Brown happily went back to steaming buns, while Russell picked up the book he'd set aside earlier. It was an epic known as Song of the Volcano, a heroic saga told through narrative poetry, recounting the legendary story of a dragon knight. About 3,000 years ago, there was a hero-like knight named Sigruft. Sigruft stood 3 meters tall and was abandoned by his parents on the snowfields as a toddler, where he was raised by a pack of wolves. Naturally filled with battle chi, he could fight with snow ghosts at a tender age. It was said that he ate so many ice pellet pearls from a young age that he became unfazed by the severe cold, unafraid of snow ghosts, and even dared to provoke the snow demon. Eventually, he was discovered by a knight regiment of a certain kingdom and brought back, where he fell in love with the princess. That's as far as Russell had read. But he guessed that the story would continue with Sigruft's exceptional talents allowing him to enter the volcano, save the kingdom's dying great dragon, and then become a dragon knight, soaring with the princess. Not very interesting, just as bland as Old White's books. Russell quickly lost interest in reading. He rose from his seat and left the manor's annex. The accompanying knights were all busy, given that it was the first day on the job for the officials, and there was much work to be coordinated. Woof! Fortunately, Kevin was there to protect him, ensuring Russell's safety. Although Kevin was Eric's contracted fantasy beast, he clearly knew that it was Russell who had saved his life, so he was quite fond of Russell. With enhanced intelligence, he could understand Russell's various commands clearly. Let's go, Kevin. We'll take a walk to Magic Medicine Ton and see how the magic potion crops are coming along. Mounting his horse, Russell left with Kevin. Before long, they arrived at Magic Medicine Ton. The serfs were busy in the fields. Upon seeing Russell, they bowed and saluted, then continued their laborious farming. Not bad. The dill has already sprouted. Green and tender shoots had emerged in the fields. This magic herb didn't require meticulous care, as dill itself was a commonly cultivated spice. Especially when cooking beef or mutton, sprinkling ground dill would notably enhance the flavor. However, using magic herb dill as a spice would be too extravagant. It was meant to be used in creating magic elixirs. Knights in training had a huge demand for magic elixirs. Take Russell, for example, who would pop a magic elixir that could boil his battle chi every morning and evening, and occasionally one that could strengthen his battle chi during meditation. Nobility relied on battle chi to solidify their rule, and the contribution of magic elixirs was indispensable. Having passed the dill magical medicine field, the rainlong flower magical medicine field was next. The rainlong flowers had also sprouted. Then, they moved into the birch forest, where each birch tree was generating a faint magic aura and transitioning into magic material. It was evident that many birch tree branches had been cut off. The serfs were then taking them for cuttings to expand the area of the birch forest. Moreover, on many of the birch tree trunks, small green glowing mushrooms had started sprouting, clustering like will-o'-the-wisps. They're coexisting quite well, Russell remarked with satisfaction. Having confirmed the healthy growth of the magic herbs and materials, he no longer paid them attention but walked to the banks of the glowing river to watch the rolling river waters. As the warm season arrived, the temperature rose day by day, melting the snow in Glowing Valley and causing the water level of the glowing river to surge. After this flooding period passes, once the river's water level and flow stabilize, we can send people down to catch river clams, Russell thought silently. He also planned to cultivate river clams manually for pearl breeding. If he could breed pearls artificially, it would be like having contracted a bipedal flying dragon, capable of producing a continuous stream of magic-imbued pearls. An exorbitant profit. It's just uncertain whether pearls can be cultivated, and the production volume is hard to guarantee. But regardless, we must attempt, Russell thought, riding his horse along the riverbank and looking meticulously for a suitable place to dig ponds. Eventually, at the point where the glowing river bends and the border between Magic Medicine Ton and Wheat Hamlet, he found a suitable depression for pond excavation. We'll arrange for people to dig it during the slack farming season. No, there's no hurry. First, Let's dig a small pond in front of the manor's guest house to experiment with pearl cultivation, Russell thought, feeling that it would be too hasty and profit-seeking to start digging without validated techniques. If the artificial pearl breeding was not successful, wouldn't the pond have been dug in vain? Let's head back. That evening, when Charles, Eric, Hans, and others came to report the day's work and took the opportunity to enjoy a meal, Russell asked Hans, who is the best at catching river clams in the manor. If it's about catching fish and grabbing shrimp, then Rib Jimmy is the best. Whenever Lord Baron sends people to ask for river delicacies, I always arrange for Rib Jimmy to lead the team to the river to catch them, he replied. Send someone to call Rib Jimmy over for me. I have a task for him. Yes, sir, Hans replied. A quarter of an hour later, Hans brought Rib Jimmy over, a young man with a dark complexion and a wiry build. Greetings to you, sir, Rib Jimmy said, a pleasing smile on his face. Do you dare to go into the river to catch clams in such rushing waters? Russell asked, pointing out the window at the glowing river. Without any hesitation, Rib Jimmy answered, I'll go and fetch some river clams for you right now, sir. With those words, he turned and ran out from the manor's guest house. Then, with a dive into the glowing river, and only a few breaths later, he was back on the shore, holding 2 sizable river clams. He wasn't quite clear on the basic technical principles, only knowing a rough outline. Rib Jimmy, Russell called out his nickname. Serfs didn't have noble surnames, and there were often repeated names, so it was common to add a nickname to easily distinguish them. I need you to open the clams without harming them. We'll need clean water, sir, Rib Jimmy said. If the clams are placed in clean water, they'll open on their own. Is that so? Russell nodded. Then he said, Then for now, I'll provisionally appoint you as a fisherman. Charles, later you recruit a group of serfs to dig a small pond nearby. We'll use this pond to raise the clams. After that, your task, Rib Jimmy, will be to catch a batch of young clams and insert small grains of sand or something similar into the flesh of the clams. Rib Jimmy didn't know why Russell was doing this, but being appointed by the Lord as a fisherman was a major opportunity for him. He couldn't help but grin from ear to ear. I guarantee the task will be completed, sir. Russell made sure Rib Jimmy was given a large piece of bread for dinner and signaled for him to start digging the pond with the others the next day, and then to start raising the clams. Once everyone had dispersed, Charles was the last to leave, asking curiously, Sir, are you trying to have these clams produce pearls? I'm entertaining that idea. But can you really do that just by stuffing a bit of sand into the clam's flesh? Charles asked incredulously. Russell didn't explain, simply stating indifferently, We're just trying it out. It won't cost much, and if it succeeds, we'll make a fortune. If it fails, we'll just treat it as adding a bit of fun to life. Charles laughed. May the great dragon watch over you, and good fortune always be by your side, sir. I hope the clams you raise will produce pearls as continuously as a bipedal flying dragon. We'll see if the shadow flame dragon turns its gaze upon me. Russell also laughed. 3 days flashed by. The small market was no longer bustling. The caravans had sold their goods and were saying their goodbyes, with the lead caravan owner expressing they would come often in the future. Meanwhile, not far from the manor's annex, near the small bridge leading into the manor, a small pond of less than 100 square meters was successfully excavated. According to Rib Jimmy's experience, the pond was dug 3 meters deep so that later it would hold 1 to 2 meters of live water, which was the suitable environment for clams to grow. After the pond was ready, they diverted water from the glowing river into it. Rib Jimmy, along with some young fellows from the manor, continually dived into the turbulent waters to catch clams. To observe the differences, Russell had them catch clams of various sizes to ultimately see which stage of clams was more suitable for pearl cultivation. Have them be careful not to get swept away by the river, Russell instructed. Rib Jimmy showed his big teeth with a smile. Don't worry, sir, we've all been imbued with chi seeds. We're strong. Even when the glowing river is more turbulent than this, we dare to dive in to catch fish. For Lord Baron, that is. Among the serfs, it was not uncommon to be imbued with chi seeds, but most of these seeds were somewhat defective, with little hope of unleashing battle chi. Anyone with a bit of talent had been sent to the training ground of the Fluorescent Castle for stringent night training. Russell's 4 night attendants were such talented serfs. After successfully unleashing their battle chi, they changed their destiny, avoiding the endless farm work and starting to follow the Lord for a different kind of life. Catching the clams. First, they placed the clams in a basin filled with fresh water, waiting for the clams to open their shells. Once this happened, under Russell's instruction, Rib Jimmy and the others quickly used a wooden board to wedge the shells open. Next, they embedded a grain of sand onto the mantle of the clam. The pearls are harvested from the mantle. After embedding the sand, they removed the wooden board. The clams snapped their shells shut quickly, and Rib Jimmy and the others tossed them into the newly dug pond to grow freely. Rib Jimmy, your task from now on is to regularly monitor the growth of these clams and make sure they don't die, said Russell. Don't worry, sir. Jimmy guarantees to take very good care of them. Rib Jimmy replied confidently. Pearl cultivation takes time, and Russell was unsure how long it would take for a pearl to mature. Perhaps 1 year, perhaps 3. In any case, it was an industry that required long-term observation. With the fish farmers in charge, Russell didn't need to keep an eye on this matter constantly. He would occasionally ride little Dream Dragon around the pond just to check for magical lights blooming. June passed in the blink of an eye. The warm season sun grew stronger and the temperature rose swiftly from the initial hovering around 0 to 17 or 18 degrees now. The whole glowing valley warmed up like spring, with plants growing almost visibly fast under the stimulation of the Earth's power. In just 1 day and night, they would grow significantly. In the fields and beside the cinder pathways, faint yellow flowers bloomed everywhere, clustering together, fully embracing the vitality brought by the warmth. These were dandelions. Russell remembered that there was a dandelion spirit insect in Fluorescent Castle, so a large dandelion field had been planted on the hill behind the castle. Every time the dandelions were ripe for the season, a breeze would send white fluff flying all over the sky, over the castle walls, toward the horizon. There are many dandelions around the manor's guest house as well. Too bad I don't have a dandelion spirit insect, Russell said, standing on the lawn in front of the gate, gazing at the little yellow flowers growing on the grass, and musing about how splendid springtime was. However, the warm and pleasant times were soon shattered by the rushing sound of horse hooves. Fluorescent Castle's messenger knight, Raphael, sped on his horse to the manor guest house. Mr. Russell, Lord Baron has ordered that all lords must attend a trade route clearance meeting at Fluorescent Castle promptly at noon today. Understand, said Russell, his eyebrows slightly raised. He then instructed Butler Morris, take Knight Raphael down for a cup of hot tea. Thank you, Mr. Russell, Raphael said without any pretense. Russell then quickly called for Eric. My father has issued an order to prepare for the trade route clearance meeting. This year I plan to participate in the clearance, so I need you, Eric, to help me get ready. Sir, you should still prioritize your studies. I will protect you closely, Eric replied. Tom and the others need to focus and quickly get in a few practice sessions together to avoid a scattered formation of the night squad after we enter the snowfield. In this regard, Eric had experience, as he had followed Baron Roman to battle in the snowfield several times. So Russell didn't plan to make decisions on his own and would follow Eric's arrangements, then head to the snowfield to gain some experience. It would be even better if they could hunt a few snow ghosts and gather some ice pellet pearls to feed to Little Dream Dragon. A moment later, leaving Eric to train the 4 night attendants, Russell took Kevin the Gold and Silver Wolfhound and followed Raphael to Fluorescent. The round table was placed against the wall, with the windows on the wall wide open. Roast the Clay Dragon's head was reaching in through the window, taking up one of the spots at the table. The fine scales, the cold gaze, the slightly parted nostrils that intermittently released jets of warm air, and the fierce double horns all showcased the unique beauty of the bipedal flying dragon. This beauty did not stem from its form, but from its power. A mild aura of dragon might enveloped the meeting room. Mr. Roman, sitting against the wall, was right next to Mr. Ross's head, currently smiling as he stroked Mr. Ross's dragon horns. Although Baron Roman had not been recognized as a dragon rider, Mr. Ross did not reject this closeness. A contract is signed through the medium of bloodlines, and once inked, it continued through the lineage, inherited generation after generation. The situation is such that a large number of snow ghosts have appeared around the Twin Rivers trade route, posing a serious threat to the route's security. They must be eliminated. Roland took the role of chairing the meeting, his gaze sweeping earnestly over the several lords and knights seated around the round table. Rosan Fluorescent Spore from Great Wind Manor, Marcus from Windmill Manor, Sally from Greycat Manor, Uteras from Red Falcon Manor, and Russell Fluorescent Fungus from Wuyao Snake Manor. When do we depart? Lord Marcus inquired. He was Melina's father and had not looked directly at Russell since entering. Are we coordinating our efforts with Count Flopot's Knight Regiment? Or are we each fighting on our own? Roland said, this time we're on our own, the center point of the Twin Rivers trade route serving as the boundary, each side cleansing their own area. So, is it Viscount Magia leading the team this time? Or is it Lord Mel? Sally asked. It's my uncle who will be leading, Roland said with a smile. Count Flopot, who was Russell and Roland's maternal grandfather and Lady Meryl's father, was Merlin Rainlongflower. Now that the Duke had just ascended to the throne and the Council of Elders had not yet disbanded, Count Merlin was still managing national affairs in Redcastle. Tributary river mouth, his territory, was managed by his sole heir and son, Viscount Magia. Magia was naturally Roland and Russell's uncle. At the same time, Magia's son, Lord Mel Ujua, 3 years Russell's elder, had also begun learning about territory management and often accompanied the Knight Regiment into battle on the snowfields. Viscount Magia, is it? Ha. When I see him then, I'll have to have a good drink with him, said Sally joyfully. The knights from both houses often fought side by side, so they were all well acquainted. Under Roland's leadership, the meeting then moved on to discuss how to allocate battle missions. Such battles to cleanse the trade route happened every year, so the seasoned lords quickly coordinated their respective roles in just a few words. Only Russell was participating for the first time. Russell, how many knights is your territory sending? Roland asked. 1 Phantom Beast Knight, 5 armed knights, including myself, Russell said. Although he had few men, the inclusion of a Phantom Beast Knight meant his contribution could not be considered meager. Then you will follow behind us, taking care of any small groups of snow ghosts that get separated, Baron Roman interjected at the right moment. Russell was just about to agree, but Mr. Ross turned his head towards him and bared his teeth with a sneer, then snorted disdainfully through his nostrils. Chuff! It was as if he were mocking Russell for being a coward. Although no one understood the dragon language, especially since each bipedal flying dragon had a unique call that was impossible to generalize, the lords seated there could interpret from Mr. Ross's cry that he was indeed mocking someone. Cough, cough! Roland even wanted to laugh, but fortunately he held it back. Regarding this, Russell, although annoyed in his heart, remained indifferent on the surface, exhibiting a kind of spirit of spitting in his own face. He responded to Baron Roman lightly. All right, father. Baron Roman patted Mr. Ross on the neck, apparently somewhat displeased that Mr. Ross was not giving Russell face. But no matter how displeased he was, there was nothing he could do, as Mr. Ross was everything in Glowing Valley. Even if it tore Russell to pieces, Baron Roman would probably only be able to weakly protest. You evil dragon, you have betrayed the family's trust in you. Then, life would continue as it must. A minor incident did not affect the tone of the meeting. After the tasks were clearly assigned, they agreed to gather at Fluorescent Castle on the 5th of July, 3 days later. The meeting thus came to an end. The lords left the castle arm in arm, chatting amiably. Russell was also heading back, but his elder brother Roland caught up to him and asked with concern, How did you offend Mr. Ross? I remember it didn't use to give you such a cold shoulder. I don't know. Think about it. There must be something you did to offend Mr. Ross. Really can't think of it. I just remember that during my coming-of-age ceremony, Mr. Ross suddenly turned very cold towards me. Russell spread his hands. He certainly couldn't tell Roland that Mr. Ross might have realized he was a transmigrator. Of course, he also harbored another conjecture in his heart, that Mr. Ross might have sensed the presence of the little dream dragon. But this conjecture was ultimately denied by him. No matter what, the little dream dragon was still a great dragon, whereas Mr. Ross was merely a bipedal flying dragon. If it had sensed the presence of the little dream dragon, Mr. Ross would likely have tucked its tail between its legs, instead of repeatedly provoking him. Great dragons. They are the existence at the top of the food chain, the greatest creation born of the earth's power. Your coming-of-age ceremony? I couldn't make it back for that. Did anything happen at the time? Roland kept asking. This made Russell, who was a bit touched by his elder brother's concern, instantly understand that Roland didn't really care about him. Instead, he wanted to learn from his negative example to identify potential points that could offend Mr. Ross and avoid them. So he just shook his head and said, "Elder brother, if I knew, I would definitely tell you and help you ride the dragon, but I truly don't know. In any case, if you want to ride a dragon, you will still have to make efforts in other areas." "What are you saying? What's this now?" Roland touched his nose in some embarrassment. "I just wanted to help you resolve the issue with Mr. Ross." Seeing the disbelief on Russell's face, he couldn't help but turn his head away, muttering, "I don't care about riding dragons at all. It doesn't matter which one of us brothers rides a dragon. It's just that the family needs a flying dragon knight. So, if I don't make an effort, who else can I rely on?" "Understand," Russell smiled, then patted Roland on the shoulder sincerely. "Elder brother, I no longer have any hope of riding Mr. Ross, so I truly hope you can succeed in riding a dragon. Father, Mother Roland, Lola, and Grandmother, we all hope so." Upon hearing this, Roland's embarrassed expression relaxed, and he laughed heartily. "Good lad, just you watch how your elder brother rides a dragon." Great dragons gaze, glowing lights blessing. Russell waved his hand. "Elder brother, I'll be leaving first. See you in 3 days." "All right,